weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on February the 12th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
Good morning. Yeah, we're live across the whole of the UK on your TV, your radio and online. So wherever you are, you can take us with you. Coming up this morning, Joe Biden speaks to Russian President Vladimir Putin today in a last-ditch effort to avert war in Ukraine after a week of failed diplomatic efforts by European nations. We'll ask the UK's former ambassador to Russia what he would say to Putin.
Also coming up in the programme, what next for the Met? After Home Secretary Priti Patel warned that Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick's replacement faces stark challenges, we'll be asking what it's going to take to put the Met back on track.
And we'll go to Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire to speak to a great-grandmother who's been running the village shop for almost half a century, literally only taking one day off on Christmas Day.
That's remarkable. I don't know how she can do it.
Devotion to duty.
Must be. We want to hear from you this morning. As always, anything you want to talk about, particularly scams, which we'll go into in a minute, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or send us a tweet at gbnews. I hate being ripped off.
I hate being ripped off, and I hate feeling that I fell prey to a scam yesterday morning. 6 o'clock, my phone pinged. It received a text. And it was this text, if you have a look, and if you're listening on the radio, I'll read it out. It said, today, 05:13, actually, it wasn't even 6, was it? NHS, you've came into contact with someone who has tested positive. Please order a test kit. And then there was a link. Now, it was 5:13 in the morning, so when I looked at it, I didn't notice the spelling error. You've came into contact. I should have noticed that. It might have alerted me. And I clicked on the link, and up came what absolutely looked like an NHS form. And we're all used to filling these things in now, aren't we?
Just do it automatically.
So it said name, address, email, credit card number, because they said, although the test is free, postage isn't, we're having to charge postage. And I thought, I'm sure I read something about the fact that they were going to start charging or something. So I even put in my credit card details.
Ouch.
Off it went, and I thought no more of it until a bit later on, my son came to visit, and I was saying, I've had this message about the fact that I've been in contact with somebody with COVID, and I don't think I have. I mean, that's the incredible thing. I'd had a very quiet week, and I said, and how does that affect me coming into GB News this weekend, do you think? And he said, well, let me have a look at the text. And he said, Mum, you shouldn't, Mum. Oh, for heaven's sake, what a dotty old bag I've suddenly become. And, he said, if you look at the top, the very top, you always look at the phone number it's come from. It was a mobile number. And he said, look at the spelling mistake, and you never click on a link, do you? And it was very early in the morning, and I wanted to do the right thing.
But if you get a text from the NHS saying, you've come into contact, what do? You just automatically go and press the button, don't you?
I have to say, I thought I was fairly wise to these things, and I know if you get an email, sort of scammy-looking thing that has come unsolicited, you never click on a link without really thinking it through. But the way it came, I just thought that's NHS test and trace. And it wasn't. And I'd given away all those details. I've frozen my credit card, of course, but I realise I've given them my things that are very useful to scammers, which is name, address, age, email address. How stupid was I? But
it is
easily done, and I didn't think I'd ever fall prey to that sort of thing. But if you've ever been scammed, what was your excuse? And how did you remedy it? What did you do? Did they actually get money out of you?
And if you've got any pictures, like Anne's taking a screenshot of that one, if you've got any pictures that we can share with people to get everyone a bit wiser,
the more people know about it, the better. My son then did click, because we'd already clicked once. He did click on the link to see what happened, and they'd already shut the website down.
Right.
He said, well, they've probably just got what they want.
Well, look, Steph's been in touch already. Morning, Steph. My grandparents almost fall victim to scams every week with text calls and post. Luckily, they have me to check anything suspicious, but not all vulnerable people have someone to do that for them. Some of them are very sophisticated.
They really are. This one was. Alexei says it's made him so angry. They even had an account with my bank, and yet I was told they couldn't get the money back from them.
And Yvonne says she felt violated. Well, I totally understand that. GB Views at GBNews for your experiences, if you would, or you can text don't text us. No. You can tweet us at GBNews. Got text on the brain now.
Well, that's the trouble, isn't it? And you do feel violated, and you also feel as though you're the one to blame, and how silly were you to fall for it. But they're at it all the time, and it gets more and more sophisticated.
And I think part of the issue is if it's on email, at least it's very easy to look at the email address that it comes from, and they're often total gobbledygook, which is a good way of telling. But on a text message,
well, I fell for it, and if you have, do let us know what your story is. Luckily, I checked, obviously, I froze the card straight away, and they hadn't taken any money from it. So with any luck, but as I said, I've given them information you just shouldn't give.
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah. Oh, I feel so silly. I really do.
Well, it's not your fault. It's not your fault, but,
we've got to be wise to these things.
Let us know if you've ended up in an Anne Diamond situation.
Yes, an embarrassment to all.
Now, to our main news this morning, and the Foreign Office is warning UK nationals to leave Ukraine as soon as possible amid warnings that Russia could invade within days. Yesterday, during a phone call with world leaders, Boris Johnson expressed his fears for the security of Europe.
In an attempt to diffuse tensions, President Joe Biden is expected to call the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, despite sources saying Moscow has already decided to move forward with an invasion. In the last hour, US officials say there are plans to evacuate its embassy in Kiev.
Well, let's talk to Sir Tony Brenton, former UK ambassador to Russia. Good morning to you. I mean, look, what's your reading of the situation? Is there anything that we can see that is prompting this sudden move to get people out of the country?
Well, of course, I mean, this is the climax of several weeks now of a building up of tension as Russians have built up their forces around Ukraine. The question is what Putin has in mind. One explanation is that he's always intended to reincorporate Ukraine into Russia, and that's what's about to happen. I personally think that's unlikely, that what he's really about is trying to get the West to respond to various demands that he's put to the West about keeping Ukraine out of NATO and so on. And what we're approaching now is the eyeball-to-eyeball moment when Biden and Putin, Biden either concedes some of the demands that Putin has made, although not, I'm sure, not in the form that they've been put, and they do a deal, or they don't, in which case he will certainly act militarily against Ukraine.
Papers and a lot of the media reports are saying Wednesday, that he's actually going to take action on Wednesday. How likely do you think that is?
You can't exclude anything, but I really don't believe that Putin wants to go to war. Putin's a very cautious foreign policy operator. I know him. He's cold, he's calculating, but he doesn't take big risks. And invading Ukraine would be a very big risk. So he would far prefer for the West to concede some of the things that he's asking for, so he can go back to his own guys back in the Kremlin and say, look, we've got this out of this operation. I've done well for Russia. Now let's begin to demobilize. Now, I could be wrong. As I say, he may genuinely want to go ahead and do it. But so far, the evidence to me is not in. He's moved a lot of troops around. He's made a lot of noise precisely to get our attention. And my goodness, he's got it.
Yeah, I mean, there is an argument out there that says, Western military build-up in Ukraine and other countries could just escalate the problem. Tobias Ellwood, over here, the MP, has said, it's bordering on panic getting people out of the country. I mean, does this all play into Putin's hands?
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, he's demonstrating the amount of tension and anxiety that he can cause. And the objective of doing that is his view that the West has ignored ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's demands for security guarantees of one sort or another. And the only way he can get the West to listen is through this sort of operation. That may be wrong. As I say, he may be intending, he genuinely thinks Ukraine is not a real state. He genuinely would like to reincorporate Ukraine into Russia. But the Putin I know is not a vast risk taker. And my guess, as I say, is that if Biden finds some sort of formula which meets Putin's needs, then things will calm down again.
If this phone call does take place between the US president and the Russian president, will they actually speak one-to-one? Obviously, they'll have interpreters, but how does it work? And do they actually get through to each other, or is that just, is it just pretense?
Oh, no, it's not. No, they each sit in an office, presumably with one or two close advisors close to them, and as you say, with interpreters. So they have plenty of time to think, although Putin does speak tolerable English, in fact, which gives him a bit of an advantage. I don't suppose Biden speaks Russian very much. But Putin, in the interchange in a phone conversation, the ability of outsiders to get their principals to say what they think they should say is really rather limited. Putin is, in the Russian context, is pretty close to flying solo. He has advisors and he listens to them, but finally the policy is made by him. Biden actually has very good people around him and has, on the whole, listened to them. So this won't be just two blokes talking to each other. It will be more of an interchange between US policy, the US foreign policy establishment on the one hand, and Putin on the other.
But we hear about these sort of conversations all the time, and I can't think of any that come to mind where this sort of conversation in this sort of atmosphere has actually led to a resolution. Is that likely at all?
No, they won't do it in the phone conversation. I mean, what you want to watch for is whether they then set up a meeting, I would guess, between Blinken and Lavrov, the two foreign ministers, as a way of trying to reach a diplomatic deal. If they don't set up a meeting, then that's a very bad sign indeed. Because at that point, it looks as if all channels of communication are one by one being closed down. But, well, we'll see. But just to cheer you up a bit, I remain really quite optimistic. The Americans have, I don't want to say exaggerated, but have played up throughout this whole saga the danger of an imminent Russian invasion. The Russians have denied it, but of course they would do that anyway. The Ukrainians, however, who know the Russians very well, also remain quite dubious about the likelihood of imminent Russian action. So all of the drama, it's great for you news folks, it makes for headlines and all of that, but I suspect that we're not quite there yet, although we're very close.
Meanwhile, what of ordinary people in those countries? People in the embassies, for instance. I mean, at the moment, all of the papers are leading on, the fact that we've been telling people to get out. Brits must get out of Ukraine. What of people in Moscow? How uncomfortable could it become for them?
Well, I mean, you're talking about various different constituencies here. I've been in an embassy in Moscow. Things can get very tense, and you do automatically think about dependents and non-crucial people who are attached to the embassy, you have a responsibility for their safety. And if you really think there's a danger, then you get them out. And that's quite a clear sign, in the case of the Americans who are now doing that in Kiev, that they really are concerned about the current situation. And you worry also about your nationals in the country concerned. And the Americans have very good reason to be worried about their nationals, because if they don't get the vast majority of them out, if the Russians do invade, the Americans might find themselves under pressure to send in their own troops to look after their nationals, at which point you've got US troops fighting Russian troops. You're on the edge at that point of World War III, which obviously everybody wants to avoid. That's another reason for getting your nationals out. In Moscow, there's very little sign of any public reaction. Of course, the press there is very pro-Putin, pro-regime, but there's very little in the press about the prospects of war with Ukraine, other than charges against the West for trying to foster it. And in Ukraine, it is striking how calm the national mood has remained through all of this, which is another rather strong reason in my mind for believing that we're not quite about to go over the precipice yet.
I mean, what's your assessment of where we are in terms of relations between Moscow and the West? I mean, how does it compare to your time as ambassador?
I thought it was bad in my time, but it's got a lot worse since. And this farrago, however it ends, is going to make it still worse. And we, the UK, have now the worst relations that we've had with Russia since the end of the Cold War. And what happened to poor old Liz Truss when she was over there on Thursday is a sign of how basically they don't take us seriously and they're very ready to humiliate us given the opportunity. The Americans, I mean, Biden came into the presidency, and it's worth remembering that less than a year ago, came into the presidency saying, being tough on Russia, but actually very focused on trying to deal with China. And he was quite determined not to let a squabble with Russia get in the way of focusing US foreign policy on China. He's been blown completely off course in that hope, in what's going on now. And we're in a situation, actually, where our confrontation with Russia is strengthening China, both because our attention is diverted from China and because it is pushing Russia more and more into Chinese arms.
A bit later on, we're going to be speaking to somebody from Russia, and whenever I've heard anyone from the Russian side, as it were, speak, they continue to blame us. They say it's us who are being aggressive, and they even go to the point of saying it's Boris Johnson it's diversionary tactics to get us talking about something other than his domestic problems. Do they really believe that, or are they just playing at it?
I don't think they believe that Boris Johnson is responsible for all of this, tempting though that might be. They firmly believe, the Russians who think about this, firmly believe that we shortchanged them after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They believe, with a certain amount of supporting evidence, that we promised them at that point that NATO would not be expanded. Or at least that it would be expanded in a reasonably consensual way, which the Russians would be involved in. They claim, again, as I say, with some justification, that we broke those promises. And that, in their view, is what has led us to the present crisis.
Gosh.
No, so it's an interesting perspective. It is interesting to see it from another side.
Yes,
and when we talk to the Russian guest a little bit later on. So Tony Brenton, former UK ambassador to Russia, it's a real privilege to talk to you this morning.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gosh, when you hear, I haven't heard that before. That, that they have maybe a reasonable complaint against us for expanding NATO non-consensually.
But then isn't there an argument to say, why don't we just try to persuade Ukraine to pull out its NATO application, and then would all this go away?
But is that good for Ukraine? How is it going to end? It has to, doesn't it?
Interesting.
Through diplomacy, one hopes.
Now, let's take you through the rest of the top stories this morning. And the Metropolitan Police has given the Prime Minister just 7 days to adequately explain his attendance at an event at Number 10 held during COVID restrictions. All face a fine. Downing Street confirmed last night the Prime Minister had received a legal questionnaire from officers and he will respond.
The Taliban have released a British journalist they've been holding for several days in Afghanistan. Andrew North was on assignment for the United Nations Refugee Agency, reporting on the country's humanitarian crisis.
Experts from SAGE are warning that lifting all COVID restrictions will have a disproportionate impact on vulnerable people. Follows the Prime Minister's announcement that restrictions will end soon, including the need to self-isolate following a positive test.
A charity is warning there's a hidden mental health crisis for older people, with millions having lost the confidence to leave their homes. Age UK says the pandemic has had an alarming impact on the elderly, who are now experiencing anxiety, memory loss and disturbed sleep.
The NHS has launched a campaign calling on people to dial 999 when they're having the early signs of a heart attack. It tells people to take action if they experience common early symptoms, including sweating, feeling lightheaded, and chest tightness.
Some schools and colleges in India have been shut since Tuesday after refusing entry to students wearing the hijab. The decision, which officials say is the result of a Ministry of Education order, has sparked protests and vigils.
I'm not entirely sure about this NHS calling 999 business.
What, early signs of a heart attack?
I mean, I know it makes sense. If you think you're having a heart attack, then you need to get assistance quickly. I just want... They're so stressed. If the early symptoms are things like sweating...
It could be anxiety, couldn't it?
It could be a whole host of things, and we know the ambulance service is really stressed. So, I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, please. Definitely not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, is it going to cause problems if a lot of these cases are not heart attacks?
I don't know. We've got to be aware of the real early symptoms and know how to tell them in ourselves, I suppose.
I think that's the key, isn't it?
I tell you what, that other report I find very interesting, and actually I can understand it. The report saying older people, that as a result of the pandemic, older people are actually much more wary of even going out at the moment. And I totally understand that, because I feel it myself. I'm less likely to go out.
Really?
Yeah. And I was discussing it with a friend of mine who's same age, and we were discussing the fact that used to look forward to going out to a restaurant in the evening or something like that. Much less likely to now. Much more cosy sort of feeling to say, why don't we just stay indoors?
Isn't that interesting? I've reached a point where, and I've been very good throughout the whole thing, masks and gloves and hand washing and all the rest of it. I've had enough now.
Yes, I can understand that too.
When I'm going to the supermarket and things, I'm not wearing a mask because we're not legally obliged
I do
to.
still, but I wonder all the time whether I'm giving into just a sense of anxiety or whether it's the right thing to do. I don't know, I still do at the moment.
It's an interesting mix, but I mean, I noticed yesterday it tended to be the younger side of people who were not wearing masks in Sainsbury's, and the older customers were. So is that a thing?
Yeah, I wonder if it is an age thing. I still haven't been to a supermarket yet, not since March 2020.
Again, deliveries or sending the boys out?
Both. But I still haven't. I haven't even been to a big shop at all since.
Oh.
It's weird. You see, that's what I mean. You don't even notice it about yourself, but you are living a slightly more wary life.
Yeah, let us know if you associate with that, if that's how you're living, or if you're a bit more like me and just thinking, I've just got to get on with it now.
I can understand that too.
GB Views at gbnews.uk. We have plenty more to come this hour, including your views on being scammed. But first, here's the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. A very different start to the day compared to yesterday. Yesterday was frosty but bright in many places. Today it's frost-free but windy and, in some locations, wet. Spells of rain are expected through the weekend. These weather fronts across the UK, stretching all the way back to the mid-Atlantic, they're going to continue to pile in throughout today and tomorrow. So, increasingly damp really across northern and western parts of England as well as Wales. The rain turning heavier and more persistent across Wales and northwest England into the afternoon. Drier and brighter ahead of that for East Anglia, the southeast, parts of the East Midlands, central southern England, but increasingly breezy and cloudy. Sunny spells coming through for Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery showers here. 10 Celsius for Belfast, 8 for Manchester, 8 for London. Similar to yesterday, but not feeling very pleasant because of the wind and the rain. Coastal gales around Irish Sea coasts, and then the rain eventually sinks into southern England during the evening. Easing off for a time before further spells of heavy rain push back into Wales and the southwest by dawn tomorrow. Drier to the north with some clear spells for Scotland, also a few showers, and frost-free tomorrow morning once again. But it soon goes downhill. Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, much of England and Wales sees wet and windy weather returning. Coastal gales for the south coast, heavy and persistent rain, particularly over parts of Wales, and the rain for the higher parts of Wales really mounting up through Saturday and Sunday. 60 and in some places 100 millimetres of rain could cause disruption. But it's looking damp everywhere, but it is milder, 10 or 11 Celsius in the south, colder for Scotland, 8 Celsius at best here. Brighter skies for the north of Scotland, just a few showers. And that bright, showery weather in the north of Scotland tends to become more widespread on Monday and into Tuesday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
$6:25. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Al on your TV and on your radio. Good to have you with us this
great
morning.
to see you.
And loads of you getting in touch. I was going to say it's good news. It's great that loads of you are getting in touch, but it's not, because it's about getting scammed.
Yeah, but I tell you what, it is good if we are constantly reminding each other to be wary of these scams. So many. I've got this lovely one from Vera.
Oh, morning, Vera.
Vera says, "Good morning to my fave presenters. Anne, I'm shocked you fell for that scam. I had the same message yesterday. I spotted the spelling and smelled a rat. It's them. Deleted immediately. My son said, 'Well done, Mum,' and I'm 87.
Yeah, good for you.
That's really smacked me on the wrist.
Yeah, well,
hasn't it?
good for you, Vera,
Yeah.
for spotting that. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Vera's 87. Ben is 15. Morning to you, Ben. Loving the show, he says. I'm 15 and get lots of scam messages every few days. I got a similar message to Anne from the NHS. His was about arranging a booster vaccine, but they didn't use capital letters at the start of the sentence, so I didn't click on the link. Thanks for talking about the issue.
there
Well,
you
morning
go.
to you, Ben. And it is important to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, nobody realises they're out there.
No, you see, my text message had a spelling error and I should have noticed it, but at 5:13 in the morning, I just was too bleary-eyed to notice that, and I was more panicked about, and that's the point, it's from the NHS, I was more panicked about the fact that I'd been in close contact with somebody with COVID and how would that affect coming into GB News this weekend, and I didn't think twice and should have.
Yeah.
Peter from Sutton says, "I now never answer the phone to any number that I haven't put into my contacts. The only exception is when I have a planned GP call and their call shows withheld on the screen. With texts like Anne, I've been caught in the past. Recently, I've had texts supposedly from Hermes, the delivery company, asking me to use a link regarding an upcoming delivery when I don't actually have a planned delivery. I deleted that. I've had that one too." It's just horrible. You feel you're being, you've got this wonderful little electronic device, which we all love our phones, and yet they're being bombarded all the time by scammers, people who would just fleece you of money.
I mean, it's absolutely wicked.
It is.
It's wicked. Elwood said, and it's a good point, anything to do with money and credit cards and all that sort of thing. Elwood said the NHS is free at point of entry. They will never ask for money. If in doubt, contact your local surgery. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. The minute they start to ask for bank details or a credit card or whatever, something isn't right.
Something smells. Yes, it does. It's just that it looked like a completely official NHS form, and I just put all the stuff in and
so easily done.
And now I'm having to go through what's probably going to be about 10 days before I get a credit card again. And I'm going to worry, aren't I? It will make me more vigilant. I'm going to check everything now for a couple of weeks until I become lazy again, I guess. How many of us check everything?
I was going to say I do.
Do you go through your bank details?
I do go through the statement and things.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to, aren't I? Because now they've got too many details.
It's a trick I learnt from my grandma back in the 80s.
And the more details you give about things that you wouldn't consider really relevant, like your date of birth, your gender, your name, address possibly, the more you're giving them ideas all the time of how to guess a password, aren't
Yes, yeah, they do use all that for passwords, but also if you're actually sort of, what do they call it, cloning your identity and things, and that's another problem in itself. Look, loads of you getting in touch about the Ukraine situation. Terry in Northern Ireland says, the guy being interviewed just now, that's Tony Brenton, who's former UK ambassador to Moscow, is talking more sense than anyone. America's talking this up to detract from a terrible mess of Biden's presidency.
Well, he was the former ambassador to Russia, which can't have been an easy job then. He said it's worse now. So we'll just have to watch and wait, I hope. Let's pray that diplomacy works in the end. Maybe this phone call between the two presidents will come up with something. You never know.
Oh, fingers crossed. Just a quick one from Mike. Morning, Mike. Always nice to get a nice email. I'm a new subscriber to GB News on YouTube. It's a good way of watching, actually. He's very pleased with our reporting and especially seeing us two on The Breakfast Show.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you very much.
So that's very, very kind of you, Mike. But, yeah, YouTube's a good way to keep in touch with all of this.
And, of course, you can keep in touch with us if you're waking up now and then you're going off to do something. You can listen to us on the radio, so you can continue staying with us. We're on DAB+.
We are indeed. GB News Radio is what we're called on there.
Is it?
Yeah.
I can't find it on my DAB. I don't understand my DAB at all. It's one of those things where, you sit in the car and it's got all these fancy buttons and everything, and I'm going to have to get out the manual and look through it because I've got no idea how to find it at all.
It's easy.
It should be easy.
Look, we do love to hear from you. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. But we've got plenty more still to come, including a look at the papers. Don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's glorious. 6:33.
It's glorious.
It's glorious. I'm trying to be enthusiastic.
Oh, all right, it's glorious.
It's
definitely glorious. Still dark.
This is Breakfast with Steve and Anne on your TV and on your radio today.
Yeah. Should we have a look at today's front pages? The Express leads with the advice from the Foreign Office telling Britons to get out of Ukraine now.
The Independent follows it up, saying there are fears a Russian invasion could begin at any time, following a warning from the White House.
The Telegraph says the US doesn't believe Vladimir Putin has made a final decision on an invasion. It adds that Russia now has enough soldiers and military hardware on the Ukrainian border to begin at any moment.
The Guardian is reporting the Treasury is pushing for an end to nearly all COVID testing as soon as possible in a bid to save billions of pounds. The plan being discussed despite warnings from public health experts and scientists.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has been told by top Tories not to try and cling on to power if the police investigation into lockdown parties finds that he broke COVID laws. That's according to iWeekend.
For the Daily Star, it says economists believe the moon should be privatised and sold off to help eradicate poverty.
That would do the trick, wouldn't it? I know. Where do they get the ideas from? It makes for a colourful front page, I suppose.
Doesn't it? Yeah, I suppose so. Let's go through the papers in a bit more detail this morning with Petri Hoskin and Andrew Eborn. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
And Petri, let's kick off with a bit of Ukraine, should we?
Well, we have to. It's pretty much every front page this morning. And I wonder, this is Joe Biden saying things could go crazy very quickly. There's something that is not resting easy with me on any of this story. I don't know if the West is antagonising Putin for some reason to create a situation where he's backed into a corner. It's kind of what it feels like, they're backing him into a corner, and he's a man that will respond if backed into a corner. He has an ego. He has all of those things. So there's something I'm not quite getting.
But if no resistance was put up,
no, there has to be resistance. But it feels to me like there's something else going on, and I don't know what it is, but I'm not alone in thinking that. There's a sense of politics being played here in a way that is not overt. But anyway, it is worrying, and there's enough soldiers there now. I think it's 100,000. I think they've got
130. They've just increased.
Yeah, they've just increased it again in Belarus.
The worrying thing as well is this, though. It's the timing. Because last night they had a conference call, Biden and various other world leaders, and obviously there was some information in that conference call where they're now saying, get out. And the UK is saying that, the Netherlands are saying that, Japan's saying that, and the US is saying that. What's interesting, though, is the time. They're all saying there might be an invasion, which will be by air in the initial stages.
Yeah.
In the next week or so. Some people are even saying Wednesday, before the end of the Olympics. Now, if people are clever on a political stage, they don't want to upset China. Putin shouldn't upset China.
What, with the timing of it?
With the timing of it, because this is coming to the end of the Olympics on the 20th. So you don't
that's
want
just
to take that moment
obscene, isn't it? That's obscene. That's just disgusting that it all hangs on not upsetting China with a bunch of people playing games. It just seems to me to be disgraceful. But, this is also, don't forget, a response to what happened in Afghanistan. Let's not forget the absolute mess and disaster it was getting citizens out of Afghanistan. And of course, Biden is quoted as saying he will not use military to get Americans stuck in a Ukrainian-Russian war. So they've got to get out now, and they're being told to get out by commercial aircraft while it exists, because an airlift is massively expensive and very, very dangerous. So again, I think this panic to get people out may have another agenda. But look, not that I'm playing this down. I do think this is the Cuban Missile Crisis, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but the Cuban Missile Crisis allegedly was sort of solved by two presidents talking to each other.
Well, exactly that.
And you do wonder whether something could be achieved by a phone call today?
I don't know. I think that the gap is so big at the moment and the respect so low. And Putin is a very different character. I mean, this is. And
Biden isn't a Kennedy.
Yeah, and Biden isn't a Kennedy. So you have a situation here where, yes, it could be solved and should be solved by those two men speaking, but the characters are just not there. And Putin is, he's a thug in a suit.
Mind you, I guess so was Khrushchev.
Yeah, that's you finished. You're out of it.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? He's not. He's a thug in a suit.
We get the thug in the suit. Yes.
Andrew, to The Guardian, looking at COVID testing being wound up.
Pushed to end the free COVID tests, despite warnings, it says the thing. And actually, it's a good idea. Because if you keep testing, Trump actually said it, you might recall, on the thing, if you stop, the way to get the numbers down is to stop testing.
It's the one thing I agree with Trump over. The more you test, the more you're going to find.
Absolutely, it was hilarious. And we laughed at it at the time. But if you look at it now, what they're saying, it costs an absolute fortune to do it. It doesn't mean that those who are vulnerable are not going to keep getting the tests and so on and so forth. It just means that every single time you've got to do it, it's costing billions. Those are the sort of figures. If there is a way of doing it, then that makes a big amount of sense. What we're doing at the moment, we're in a war. We're in a war against the pandemic, and there's a number of victims. I always say the first casualty in the war is the truth. And if you want to spread any message, the best way of selling that message is through fear. By having constant testing, wearing masks, all this sort of stuff, when it was sensible to do so, and there are arguments about that, we are now getting to a stage, as I predicted, that it's going to be far less dangerous with the variants. And as a result, let's start easing off. Let's start saving money. Let's try and get back to a new normal. And you might recall the last time we had the pandemic, in 1918, they wrongly called Spanish flu. After that period, we went into what was called the Roaring Twenties, a period of sustained economic growth. I reckon if we stop getting scared, and you look at the figures coming out about how well we're doing with the economy and the predictions for the future, we can get into a really good place. So I think this is a positive story, and I think we should look at it as a positive story.
I think that we should also, I think it's slightly disrespectful to the hundreds that are still dying a week. Those numbers are still catastrophically high. We need a better breakdown of those numbers. We need to know why and if they're dying with or from, and there needs to be more honesty. And I think honesty removes fear quicker than saying don't test.
Well, there is news in some of the papers today of a new variant called they're calling Deltacron or something, because it's a mixture of the original Delta and Omicron.
But they are also saying it's also mild. And this is the way that viruses go. This is what they do. In order to survive, they don't want to kill their host. The common cold is a COVID virus, right? And it's very successful. So to be successful as a virus, you don't kill your host, you get weaker, but you spread
further.
And that's what they do. But I do think that we need to be very, not cautious as in scared, but I want more facts on the table, I want more truth on the table before we start going, oh, it's over. I want to know the truth.
Question everything, proceed with caution, but not with fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Informed decisions, that's what you want.
Yeah.
So it's all about sort of people have freedom of choice.
But it becomes politicised, doesn't it?
And that's the tragedy.
But asking for truth...
Shouldn't be a problem.
I mean, we've always followed the science, haven't we, apparently?
Well, when it suits us to follow the science.
But we also found, didn't we, that scientists don't agree.
Well, you always combine, and history is the greatest educator, isn't it? You look back and say, shine a spotlight, did we do the right thing? And I've been fascinated to see how different countries around the world have approached it. And déjà vu, where you keep seeing the history repeating itself. And the reason history repeats itself is because we don't learn the lessons from history. So look at what happens, look at the sensible way of progressing it, and we can look on that sort of basis. But I do think there's a positive message that we should look. Let's get out of fear, let's get into informed decisions, and let's work forward in a really positive way.
Yeah. No, I like the sound of that, got to be honest. And we need some positive news. Petri, in the Express, pages 8 and 9, looking about our economy doing very well.
I was kind of surprised by this being in the Express, because it's incredibly sort of buoyant and upbeat about the economy. And look, you know, there's two sides, or several sides to this story that aren't completely adding up. So I'm glad the Treasury's maths is perhaps better than mine, but I can't see it. But
one hopes.
One hopes. What are you saying, Anne?
No, I'm just hoping their maths
genius.
You might be.
Well, hopefully, yes. Well, in that case, could you advise them, please?
No,
I'm just hoping they got it right.
This is about the economy growing. It's growing faster than predictions. You know, when you talk about something growing, you have to watch where it's grown from. And so, from nothing, it's quite good. And it is good, and I don't want to play it down. But this is where I part company with Rishi Sunak. He's going, yeah, it's all doing well, and thanks to the British people and the public, and you've all done amazingly. And yet he's going to punish the British people with a national insurance hike, which is not necessary and is political, in my view. And it's not economic, it's political. And because the tax take, and there's not enough talked about this, because the economy has grown and jobs have grown, the tax take to the Treasury has also grown, way bigger than they predicted. So when Rishi Sunak came up with, or he's saying it's Boris Johnson's tax idea, but anyway, shoving it off.
Yeah.
But, you know, basically, when they came up with the idea to increase NI because we needed that money, they predicted that the tax take to the Treasury would be way, way lower than it actually is. So it doesn't really make sense in economic terms. If they really wanted to help the British public, they would delay it 6 months, a year, until the economy settles. Because the trouble with the growth is you might get a tip. So you've got to be very careful, and of course inflation as well. So pause it, please.
Well, the other thing to bear in mind is the timing. So it's a Conservative government. Conservative governments are known for tax cuts and so on and so forth. We have an election in 2 years' time.
Exactly, that's what it's timed
Get your
for,
banks,
isn't it?
get your banks of all the opportunities to give all the little nuggets.
But he needs
when
to
the
do it
election comes
now.
up.
He needs to
Does
do it
he?
now, yes.
Morally and economically, absolutely. Politically, if I'm with Anne, it's slightly cynical, you turn around and say the election's not until 2 years'
Exactly.
time.
That's when we'll do it.
That is disgusting again.
Yes, but it is. It's politics.
It's just politics. I mean,
they're playing politics with our lives and our bank
really
balances.
going to suffer with this hike.
Watch this space, but I think we're right.
It'd be interesting to see. There's a lot of pressure building on this one.
Yeah,
Look,
I do. I think so too. And I think if Boris wants to save his backside, he might just announce.
Oh, he's got lots of red meat to come, I can promise that as well.
Look, Andrew Eborn, Petri Hoskin, we must leave it there for now, but not for long. We'll see them again a little bit later on.
Yeah, meanwhile, at 6:45, a very good morning to you. A great-grandmother in West Yorkshire has been running a convenience store in a tiny hamlet for nearly half a century.
May's Stock Shop near beautiful Hebden Bridge has been supplying hikers and isolated villagers with goods since 1974. The doors open at 7 and shut at 9 in the evening.
Wow, long days.
Every day except Christmas Day.
Well, Anna Riley went along to speak to May to find out what's made her business so important to her in a place with more sheep than people.
Nestled at the top of a valley above Hebden Bridge in a remote corner of Yorkshire lies May Stock Shop. The locals call it an Aladdin's cave, and inside it's packed with everything you'd need. The store has been run by the 81-year-old great-grandma since the 1970s, first set up as a refreshment stop for walkers along the nearby Pennine Way, one of Britain's most popular hiking routes.
Well, it's a lifeline for a lot of them, you know, because it's a long way. It's 240-odd miles from beginning to end, and a lot of it's worse than this. So if you can just do and get them on the way, and it makes them, give them a bit more encouragement to keep going.
Even though the area is so remote, with the rise of Airbnb and the amount of walkers, there's never been a day when someone doesn't call in for something.
We have a favourite walk over here, and it's great because we don't have to carry our lunch. We can come in and have a lovely sandwich or a pie and a lovely big
pot of tea.
Hot cup of tea. Yeah. That's what we like.
But it isn't just tourists who rely on May's shop. It's crucial to the small but spread out community and for isolated people in this remotest corner of the Calder Valley.
A lot of them are elderly and they won't have seen anybody for perhaps a week or something like that, because milkmen don't go now like they used to do they? And no, they come and we have a buffet and they just sit on the buffet and we make them a brew and and they change, you know, you can see when they're going out, the faces, they're happy. I've just done it so long, it's just part of life. And I've had a good life, so that's all that matters, isn't it? It's true Yorkshire grit, it just keeps us going, plodding on. Keep smiling.
So, despite May running the shop for half a century, she's certainly got no plans for retirement yet. Anna Riley, GB News, Calden.
I love that. Real Yorkshire grit.
But you see, that's what keeps people going, isn't it? That's why a lot of people stay on in their jobs, you know, until they get really old, because they love being important. It makes it makes life worthwhile, and also you meet lots of people. So that's great. Good.
I love that. Do you know how nice it is to hear proper Yorkshire accents on the telly? You don't get it in many places now, do you? Unless it's a drama.
True, you do get it in a lot of dramas.
Get it in dramas, but not real people. More of it, I say.
Okay.
Now, time for the sport this morning with Aidan McGee, who's standing by. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Both. How are you?
Morning.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk controversy, should we?
Cats.
Kurt Zouma. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, David Moyes, the West Ham manager, gave his press conference yesterday. It was a show of defiance. I think you'd have to say, in fact, it's been reflected on the back of the Daily Express. Moyes' show of defiance here. If we look at how the Mirror have reflected on it as well, Zouma set to start again. They're playing Leicester City tomorrow in the 4:30 kickoff. They've decided to persevere, as they did against Watford in the week, and they're going to play him. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, because I think he's got to come back at some point. OK, if he didn't play the game against Watford,
just to remind everybody, he is the footballer who badly treated his cat.
Yes.
And the video went online, it's gone viral, and it is horrible. Horrible if you watch it.
It is horrible.
And I'm not sure they should, I think. And they fined him 2 weeks' pay, haven't they?
It's £250,000.
Yeah, but that's nothing. That's 2 weeks' pay to him.
It is. There's still a lot of money to be donated to animal welfare charities.
But that doesn't make it right,
It doesn't make it anything right. But, I mean, you know, how far do we have to go? Do we accept that there has to be some kind of rehabilitation in this? How far do we want to go? We've had people on Twitter saying that he should be sent to prison.
It's a prosecution, isn't it, that people are looking for?
Yes, they are, yeah. But, I mean, as I say, it's £250,000 in wages. He's lost his boot deal with Adidas. West Ham have suffered themselves with they've lost their sponsorship deal with Vitality. They've lost their sponsorship deal with the holiday company Experience Kissimmee, who've been in the club for about 4 or 5 years now.
But isn't it true that the club didn't really do anything until sponsors threatened to pull away?
I disagree with that. They're aware of it, and they knew that the player needed to have some kind of rehabilitation. He needed to understand how to treat animals. That was clear. They played him on Wednesday because I think, from the club's point of view, they thought he has to play sometime. So let's get it done in a home game, which was obviously Wednesday against Watford. Better to do that at home against Watford than against Leicester away from home. Now, this player's going to... I've got no sympathy for him at all. Let me be absolutely clear about that. But he's going to be dogged by this for the rest of his career.
But you see, it's interesting, isn't it? Looking at the online petition, prosecute Kurt Zouma and remove his animals to a place of safety. Well, the animals have been removed.
Animals have been removed,
But the prosecution hasn't happened. 321,247 people have signed that. That's pressure building.
Yeah, that's pressure building, yeah. But, I mean, the Met have said clearly they're not going to investigate it. He's had his cats removed from him. He's being punished. We have to accept that there has to be a form of rehabilitation here. You know, you can keep on punishing the guy, you can take his blood if you want to, but at some point he has to be reintegrated into the team.
Yeah, so the club have quite cynically said, right, well, let's start that now, because that means that sooner or later he will be acceptable again.
Yeah, exactly. You have to do it sometime, and so if it doesn't, I mean, you know, David Moyes might think, well, why should I be punished? Why should the club be punished? Why should the fans be punished?
Yeah, the fans are all booing him on all sides, weren't they?
I don't think it was all sides. I think some of them were. I think the Watford fans were very vociferous about it. There's no question about that. But I think there's also an understanding that you have to, as David Moyes said, there has to be forgiveness somewhere along the line. Now, as I say, he's going to be troubled by this for the rest of his career. And also, anybody who thought that they were just going to end his contract when they paid £30 million for him last August. I mean, that's just living in cloud cuckoo land. That's operating outside the realms of commercial reality. So there has to be some kind of
I wonder what would be a
acceptance.
better punishment of sort then.
Well, I think, look, there's
I think fining him 2 weeks' wages is laughable.
Well, OK, fine, but I mean, he's lost other stuff as well. The club have also been punished, but he's also clearly he has to understand. He has to be taught how to respect and to treat animals. OK, so the RSPCA, and by the way, the £250,000 is going to animal welfare charities as well. They haven't said. They must point out that the RSPCA haven't confirmed that they've received anything yet. So that's.
At the moment, it feels like dirty money.
Possibly, but I mean, the RSPCA.
I mean, he's French, isn't he?
He is, yes.
Because France has said, I don't know how official it is, but somebody in France has said if he'd done that here, he would be prosecuted. No doubt about it.
Possibly.
So maybe we should show a bit of guts and prosecute him.
Yeah, look, maybe, but I mean, the law has to be there in the first place before he commits the crime. You know,
can get done for cruelty to animals.
Yeah,
the RSPCA should.
There was a case recently, wasn't there? Didn't somebody microwaved a hamster or something like that?
Oh, don't, please.
That's true. It's true. It did actually happen.
But I mean, the RSPCA often takes these things to court. So I don't know why they're not doing
so why aren't they stepping in?
True.
Something needs
well,
to
anyway,
be
he's going to play. So he's going to play tomorrow against Leicester. It'll be interesting to see what you'll see a different reaction, possibly an even more vociferous one because it's an away venue. So that's the difference.
Yeah. Let's talk Kamila Valieva.
I know. So in Olympics last week we spoke politics, didn't we? This week we're talking drugs. So it never ceases to amaze me that we can talk about the Olympics forever and a day and we don't seem to talk about the sport very often. This is a 15-year-old...
She's a stunning ice dancer.
Yes, without doubt. I mean, so she's taking this banned substance, which is very, very peculiar because it's on the banned list, although it's taken in regular use by everyday people to solve problems with or to help with problems of angina. I doubt at the age of 15 years old she's going to be struggling with that. So it clearly is a performance-enhancing drug. A guy from the Daily Mail was actually criticised for confronting her in the mixed zone just a few days ago and asking her if she took drugs. Now, to me, again, if the Olympic movement are going to allow Russian athletes to compete under this peculiar banner, the ROC, the Russian Olympic Committee, then to me that's Russia competing. 212 athletes.
Yeah. And the point is she's 15.
She's 15, somebody else is responsible.
No, exactly. This drugs test was back in December, wasn't it?
It was December 25th, Anne. I mean,
So what's going
7
on?
weeks.
How come a 15-year-old is found guilty of taking any banned substance? It can't just be her. It must be the people who are encouraging and coaching her. It must be.
Without. And so that investigation is going to take even longer. But 7 weeks, and 7 weeks before this actually comes to light. The games are underway now.
That's crazy. It should have come to light.
This was in... And the sample was identified in a lab in Stockholm, which was WADA approved, the World Anti-Doping Agency. It was WADA approved. So nobody can say it was an illicit substance from somewhere else and it's been tested outside of the realms or the framework of the Olympic movement. This is a failure of the system, no question about it.
Look, Aidan, we've got 30 seconds.
Yeah?
You went to a party last Saturday night.
I wasn't here last Sunday. I'm really sorry about that. I did. Yeah, I dressed up as Margaret Thatcher. We had a wonderful time. A wonderful time.
Oh, my
goodness,
that's wonderful.
That's my kitchen. So the problem was the outfit turned up without a wig. I had to buy a wig and spray it sort of reddish
you've done
kind of
quite
colour.
a good job.
But I think I've matched. The handbag's done.
Yeah,
okay,
the handbag makes it, actually.
Yeah, the eyeliner was... I didn't get it off until Tuesday. It was unbelievable. Lipstick having to be reapplied every 20 minutes. I can't cope with that.
I love it.
Keep your lipstick up.
No, yeah,
Was there a competition? Did you win?
No, there wasn't a win. I didn't win. I was competing with Big Bird, a Space Hopper, Bjorn Borg, and the Milk Train Man. So I had stiff competition.
I think you should have won.
But I had a fantastic time.
I'm glad you had a good time.
Good to see you this morning. Catch up with you later on. Now we've got plenty more still to come for you this morning, and of course lots of your views. But first, here's the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. A very different start to the day compared to yesterday. Yesterday was frosty but bright in many places. Today it's frost-free but windy and, in some locations, wet. Spells of rain are expected through the weekend. These weather fronts across the UK, stretching all the way back to the mid-Atlantic, they're going to continue to pile in throughout today and tomorrow. So, increasingly damp really across northern and western parts of England as well as Wales. The rain turning heavier and more persistent across Wales and northwest England into the afternoon. Drier and brighter ahead of that for East Anglia, the southeast, parts of the East Midlands, central southern England, but increasingly breezy and cloudy. Sunny spells coming through for Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery showers here. 10 Celsius for Belfast, 8 for Manchester, 8 for London. Similar to yesterday, but not feeling very pleasant because of the wind and the rain. Coastal gales around Irish Sea coasts, and then the rain eventually sinks into southern England during the evening. easing off for a time before further spells of heavy rain push back into Wales and the southwest by dawn tomorrow. Drier to the north with some clear spells for Scotland, also a few showers, and frost-free tomorrow morning once again. But it soon goes downhill. Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, much of England and Wales sees wet and windy weather returning. Coastal gales for the south coast, heavy and persistent rain, particularly over parts of Wales, and the rain for the higher parts of Wales really mounting up through Saturday and Sunday. 60 and in some places 100 millimetres of rain could cause disruption. But it's looking damp everywhere, but it is milder, 10 or 11 Celsius in the south, colder for Scotland, 8 Celsius at best here. Brighter skies for the north of Scotland, just a few showers. And that bright, showery weather in the north of Scotland tends to become more widespread on Monday and into Tuesday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Oh, a very good morning to you. 7 o'clock, bright and early on February the 12th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on your TV, on radio and online. So wherever you are, you can take us with you. Coming up this morning, Joe Biden speaks to Russian President Vladimir Putin today in a last-ditch effort to avert war in Ukraine after a week of failed diplomatic efforts by European nations.
Also coming up in the programme, what next for the Met after the Home Secretary warned that Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick's replacement faces stark challenges. We'll be asking what it's going to take to put the Met back on track.
And we'll go up to beautiful Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire to speak to a great-grandmother who's been running a village shop for almost half a century, only taking time off on Christmas Day.
Oh, we've got loads of your views coming through this morning. Keep them coming through because we are going through them in a lot of detail for you today. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or send us a tweet @GBNews. Loads of you getting in touch on scams this one because you got scammed yesterday.
Yeah, I got scammed and I thought I was quite wise to this sort of thing, but I really wasn't. I got a text at 5:13 in the morning. My phone pinged and I thought it was something important, so I looked at it. And of course I was a bit bleary-eyed at 5:13. I didn't see straight away that there were some obvious hints that it was a scam. Look at that. Text message today, 0513, NHS. You've came into contact with someone who has tested positive. Please order a test kit, and then there's a link to press. Now, I should have noticed, first of all, that it should have been you've come, or maybe the NHS would have phrased it better anyway. You've came. I should have noticed the spelling mistake. But what did I do? I clicked on the link. You should never do that, of course, but I did because I was panicked about, not being able to go out, maybe having to isolate or whatever. I clicked through and the link looked like an absolutely bona fide NHS webpage, and it asked me for all sorts of details, which I am so ashamed to say I gave.
Don't be ashamed.
Name, address, age, gender, credit card details. I can't believe I did it. So I clicked through, and it was only when my son came home to visit and I said, I'm so annoyed because I don't know if I don't see how I can possibly have been in close contact with anyone who's had COVID because I've hardly been out for the last few days. And also, what does that mean I should now do about coming into GB News, all the rest of it? And he said, hang on a minute, let me see the text. And he had a look and he said, Mum, in that sort of voice they use, Mum, couldn't you see? And there were obvious hints that it was a scam, and I'd gone right in and had fallen right for it. And I'm not the only one, because everybody's getting in touch this morning saying they are, well, some of them are much wiser than me, but also the fact that they're being bombarded with scams.
But you don't even know necessarily when you've been scammed, because our very own Mark White has been in touch this morning. Morning, Mark. Can happen to us all, sadly. I got letters from 2 banks recently thanking me for setting up new bank accounts, but I hadn't.
Oh.
So scammers have got my name, address, date of birth, probably from a data leak. So worry, as they can then apply for credit and loans and mortgages in my name.
That's what I've got to watch out for, because even though the payment didn't go through, and obviously I've stopped the card, they've got enough details to make trouble if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Joan has said, morning, Anne and Stephen. My bogus text came last night. It was immediately deleted and the number blocked. Honestly, Anne. There is often a Hermes delivery text too, so don't click on any links.
Yeah, good one from Frank. Morning, Frank. Says, it's always a good idea if you're unsure about an email, just hover the mouse over the link and it will show you the address. Which is really interesting.
That's interesting as well. But what I should have noticed is, and this is what my son said to me, there's always a number at the top of the text to show where the text is coming from. And he said, you should have looked at that because it's a mobile number. And it was quite obviously a mobile number.
Well, that's the clever thing with phones these days. They do sort of access almost like a phone book and a database. Actually, I got a load of texts off the NHS yesterday for various reasons, but it does come up as NHS.
NHS. With an official number or just NHS?
No, it just says NHS.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else.
But that's interesting, the business of course, I didn't have a mouse because it came as a text. I didn't have a mouse to hover over the link. That's a good idea. But I suppose the basic thing to remember is don't click on any links that have come unsolicited from you.
Well, the good old phone calls, don't get as many of them now, but Paul, you're my sort of man. I'd love to meet you.
Yeah.
He says, I love the scam calls. As a pensioner, it keeps me busy winding them up and wasting their time. I pretend to be dim and half deaf. Good on you.
Yeah,
waste their time.
Good, actually. Yeah.
I love that.
A lot of girls, again, about what I was talking about earlier, and we've been reporting it in our headlines, that there is a report saying that one of the results of the pandemic is it's making particularly older people a little more wary of going out at all. Even though we're told it's safe to now and everything. And I was saying, I understand that because I sort of go out less now. I'm just much more wary about going out. Peter says, no, and you must get out and wave 2 fingers to the virus. Don't be a prisoner to it. I'm 75 and I've been going out and about, shopping, playing bridge, etc. What's the point of living otherwise?
Fair point. Talking of waving, Carol says, I'm 71, slightly high risk, still wear a mask, and I don't want to leave the house. Walking is painful, but I push through. I usually go weekly food shopping on a Wednesday, but lately I've been waiting for Saturday when a friend picks me up in a car at 7 in the morning. My get up and go has up and went.
Oh.
She'd like to try the new veggie burger.
At a certain place, yeah.
Yeah, but I have to take a bus and it's a fairly long walk.
Oh, come on. So Carol's neighbour,
waving to Stephen. I'll wave back. Morning, Carol.
Yeah. I hope one of your neighbours goes and gets a veggie burger for you. Actually, they do deliver in places now as well, don't they?
Oh, that, those various
yes,
apps
those
and
people.
things.
Carmelina says, hi, Stephen and Anne. It was reassuring to hear Anne talking about her anxiety. I, too, haven't been to a supermarket since March 2020. Always wear a mask out. Can't yet see when I might go out with friends. I'm a full-time carer for my mum and I've been shielding with her for 2 years. It's going to take a long time to get my confidence back.
That's it.
That's what it's about, confidence.
Yeah. Well, I hope you do get it back.
Yeah, we have to in the end, don't we? We have to push forward.
It's interesting, whoever says, what's the point of living otherwise, Peter? Sort of agree. I'm hitting that point.
If you're a carer, you've got to be careful.
Yeah.
But you've had enough, haven't you, of these
I've had enough, and I'm in a vulnerable category because I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
But I've had enough now. Need to get on with life. Let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Now, at 7:08, the United States are set to evacuate their embassy in Kiev amid threats of Russia invading Ukraine. Yesterday, the Foreign Office warned UK nationals to leave Ukraine with immediate effect.
Well, in an attempt to diffuse tensions, the US President Joe Biden will call Russian leader Vladimir Putin today, despite sources saying that Moscow has already decided to move forward with an invasion.
Well, earlier, we spoke to former British ambassador to Russia, Sir Tony Brenton. This is what he had to say.
This is the climax of several weeks now of a building up of tension as Russians have built up their forces around Ukraine. The question is what Putin has in mind. One explanation is that he's always intended to reincorporate Ukraine into Russia, and that's what's about to happen. I personally think that's unlikely, that what he's really about is trying to get the West to respond to various demands that he's put to the West about keeping Ukraine out of NATO and so on. And what we're approaching now is the eyeball-to-eyeball moment when Biden and Putin, Biden either concedes some of the demands that Putin has made, although not, I'm sure, not in the form that they've been put, and they do a deal, or they don't, in which case he will certainly act militarily against Ukraine. You can't exclude anything, but I really don't believe that Putin wants to go to war. Putin's a very cautious foreign policy operator. I know him. He's cold, he's calculating, but he doesn't take big risks. And invading Ukraine would be a very big risk. So he would far prefer for the West to concede some of the things that he's asking for, so he can go back to his own guys back in the Kremlin and say, look, we've got this out of this operation. I've done well for Russia. Now let's begin to demobilize. He's demonstrating the amount of tension and anxiety that he can cause. And the objective of doing that is his view that the West has ignored ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's demands for security guarantees of one sort or another. And the only way he can get the West to listen is through this sort of operation. Putin, in the interchange in a phone conversation, the ability of outsiders to get their principles to say what they think they should say is really rather limited. Putin is, in the Russian context, is pretty close to flying solo. He has advisors and he listens to them, but finally the policy is made by him. Biden actually has very good people around him and has on the whole listened to them. So this won't be just two blokes talking to each other. It will be more of an interchange between US policy, the US foreign policy establishment on the one hand, and Putin on the other. I've been in an embassy in Moscow. Things can get very tense, and you do automatically think about dependents and non-crucial people who are attached to the embassy. You have a responsibility for their safety, and if you really think there's a danger, then you get them out. And that's quite a clear sign, in the case of the Americans who are now doing that in Kiev, that they really are concerned about the current situation. And you worry also about your nationals in the country concerned. And the Americans have very good reason to be worried about their nationals, because if they don't get the vast majority of them out, if the Russians do invade, the Americans might find themselves under pressure to send in their own troops to look after their nationals, at which point you've got US troops fighting Russian troops. You're on the edge at that point of World War III, which obviously everybody wants to avoid. So that's another reason for getting our nationals out. In Moscow, there's very little sign of any public reaction. Of course, the press there is very pro-Putin, pro-regime, but there's very little in the press about the prospects of war with Ukraine, other than charges against the West for trying to foster it. And in Ukraine, it is striking how calm the national mood has remained through all of this, which is another rather strong reason in my mind for believing that we're not quite about to go over the precipice yet. However it ends is going to make it still worse. And we, the UK, have now the worst relations that we've had with Russia since the end of the Cold War. And what happened to poor old Liz Truss when she was over there on Thursday is a sign of how basically they don't take us seriously and they're very ready to humiliate us given the opportunity.
Interesting. That was Tony Brenton, who used to be our ambassador to Russia. What a job, eh? But don't you find it fascinating? Former ambassadors, obviously they have to be diplomats at the time. They can't speak totally what they'd like to tell you. But later, when they're retired or whatever, they're so interesting because they're so knowledgeable, I suppose.
It's just those insights that you never normally get.
Yeah.
And am I the only one? It's a very serious issue, and it's very good that we had a good long chat with Sir Tony on that. But am I the only person who wanted to see his cats? Because you hear the cats meowing
wasn't
in the
it?
background.
I was wondering that. It's funny, we've all got so used to doing Zoom calls and Skype calls from our home, but the pets will in on them.
They will.
My dog gets absolutely furious because she realises that she's no longer the centre of attention and that I've been spending a lot of time talking to a camera, and she hates it. She's all over it and she's barking for attention. Do you know, at one point, I was doing a Zoom call yesterday and I was in the middle of an interview and I could see her in the kitchen. She was going through the rubbish bag. I'd done the rubbish bag.
No.
She was having a go at the rubbish bag, and I was furious. Like, there's nothing I could do because I was trying to do an interview.
Trying to be very specific.
Does your cat Tilly get in on?
If you're a cat owner, you'll know if you get a laptop out, then cats want nothing more than to sit on the keyboard.
Yeah, to walk all over it.
So,
why do they do that?
You know, I can't. When I'm doing Zoom stuff, I can't avoid having him in shot because he's normally trying to end the call.
Well, Sir Tony Benton there, actually, yeah, he's a very vociferous cat there.
Yes, very vocal.
Absolutely.
Bless him. OK, let's bring you up to date with the other stories this morning. And the Met Police has given the Prime Minister just 7 days to adequately explain his attendance at an event in Number 10 during COVID restrictions or face a fine. Downing Street has confirmed that the PM has had a legal questionnaire from officers and will respond.
The Taliban have released a British journalist they've been holding for several days in Afghanistan. Andrew North was on assignment for the United Nations Refugee Agency, reporting on the country's humanitarian crisis.
Experts from SAGE are warning that lifting all COVID restrictions will have a disproportionate impact on the vulnerable. It follows the Prime Minister's announcement that restrictions will end soon, including the need to self-isolate following a positive test.
Meanwhile, a charity is warning there's a hidden mental health crisis for older people, with millions having lost the confidence to leave their homes. Age UK says the pandemic has had an alarming impact on the elderly, who are now experiencing anxiety, memory loss and disturbed sleep.
The NHS has launched a campaign calling on us to dial 999 if we think we're having the early signs of a heart attack. It tells people to take action if they experience common early symptoms, including sweating, feeling lightheaded and chest tightness. Now, the Prime Minister has been sent a questionnaire by the Metropolitan Police as part of their investigation into Downing Street and Whitehall lockdown parties. He's got a week to respond, and he could face a possible fine for breaking lockdown rules.
And of course, meanwhile, the search for a new Metropolitan Police Commissioner continues, following the resignation of Dame Cressida Dick. Yesterday, Home Secretary Priti Patel warned the new police chief must be prepared to tackle policing culture, which has left the country's biggest force reeling from a series of scandals.
Well, let's talk to former Detective Chief Inspector at the Met, Peter Kirkham. Good to see you this morning, Peter. Look, what does the Met need to do moving forward?
Everybody's talking about the organisational change that's needed, and that is absolutely central. But if you're going to change or try to change the attitudes of an organisation, you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to spend a lot of time. I doubt very much whether the next commissioner will see it happen, the change happen fully, even within their term, which would be usually sort of 5 or 7 years or something. These things can take a long, long time, 10 years of constant reinforcement, a range of activities, workshops and such like. And they're difficult. When you've got embedded attitudes, cultural attitudes, they take some shifting.
So is the new police chief commissioner going to come, do you think, from inside the Met, or must it be an outsider in order to achieve that, even if it is going to take a long time?
The successful applicant might come from either within or without the Met. What they always used to say was that you needed to have some experience in the Met, but also some experience of an outside force, so you saw different ways of doing things. And that seems to have sort of gone by the wayside a little bit, but it would be the sort of best possible background. Usually what that would mean would be either someone spends a lot of time in the counties and then comes to the Met for a few years at a senior rank and then has a bid for commissioner, or the flip side is someone stays in the Met for a long time and then goes out to the counties for a couple of years and then reapplies for the commissioner job from there. So a mix of experience is usually needed.
Look, it strikes me as a little bit unfair that there is this attitude towards the Met. I mean, certainly in a lot of the press, just sort of implying that it's rotten. I mean, that isn't fair, is it, to the rank and file, the thin blue line?
It's not fair at all. The amount of stereotyping of police officers, ironically, that is being done by the media and others at this time is quite breathtaking. I've spoken for a number of years about the asymmetric reporting of policing matters. By that I mean that the bad things are multiplied and repeated, and they're just, they're there all the time and people can't possibly miss them. The good things, they struggle to get off the starting line. They certainly don't get headline news. They certainly don't get constant repetition. And so the public are left with a totally unbalanced view of what policing is. If they only look at the news, they would come to the conclusion that it's rotten to the core. It isn't. The vast majority of police officers, on the vast majority of occasions, do a perfectly acceptable job. A small number are really good, stunningly good, and a small number are really bad. But the vast, vast majority are in the middle. And the public seem to have lost sight of that, and the media and the politicians too.
Well, isn't that because the Met is based in London, which is where, of course, the press and the media are based? And also, some are hinting that maybe the Met is just too big, has too many responsibilities. It doesn't just look after its own patch. It looks after, in so many terms, it looks after the whole country. Is there something that should be done about that?
It's an option. You could certainly hive off some of the national responsibilities. It's a bit of an anachronism that Met police officers can be found at Windsor Castle and other royal palaces at great expense, but that's traditionally been the way that it's done, and nobody's decided to change that, but there's no reason why it couldn't be changed. The anti-terrorism work, as long as it's done, it could be done by any competent detective. So again, it doesn't have to be attached to the Met. It could be attached to a national body. It could become a national body all of its own. We've seen that the anti-terrorist work has been split out to regional hubs a number of years ago now, and they've worked really well. So there's no reason why the Met should keep it. I don't think that is the big factor, though. Compared to everything else, that is a relatively small amount of their time and attention span. It would help, obviously. But the big problem, if you like, is that the Met is just so large, and ordinary policing terms. There are 30,000 officers, which is a fair proportion of the total in the country. If you've got that number of officers, you'll get things that go wrong. They'll be dealing with that number of incidents that some are obviously going to come to notice. And so you're going to get a constant stream of negative stories from the Met. You get them from the county forces as well, but they're further apart, and so they're not so noticeable. In the Met, there's one or two every week, maybe every day, I don't know.
I mean, are you glad to be out of it, Peter? I mean, because I sort of wonder because obviously someone like you, I mean, you're sort of personally out of it, but you'll still have a huge number of contacts with people who are still in. I mean, is it a bit of a miserable time for a lot of people because of all this pressure?
It's a hugely miserable time. Morale is at a rock bottom. They are just rushed about from pillar to post all day and every day. There is no time to do anything properly. And that's what concerns me, that if they just bring in a new commissioner, they do not fix the budgets so that we're back to the equivalent of 2010 at least, adjusted for inflation and adjusted for increased demand, and an undertaking to fully fund whatever organisational change programme the commissioner comes up with. Unless they do those two things, the new commissioner isn't going to succeed. The actual identity of the commissioner is marginal in these things. Far more fundamental is the time officers are trained, the amount of supervision and management, especially the amount of supervision and management there is out there for several other things, such as the stuff around WhatsApp groups and such like. This was all wrecked with the cuts and totally devastated. If I was going to go for this job, I'd have two preconditions: put the budgets back and fund my organisational change programme. If the answer to those was no, I'd say find someone else.
Okay.
What do you think of the outgoing commissioner? I mean, do you think it's right that she was put under such pressure that she felt she had to resign? Are you glad to see her go?
No, Khan's been playing political games. Others have been playing political games. The media have decided she's on their list this week, and they've got her in their sights. She has basically been hounded out by constant and largely unfair and inaccurate representation of what she's done wrong somehow. Cressida Dick was one of the better commissioners we have had. She is a mix of operational and academic, which is unusual. You usually get someone that's one or the other, or certainly far more comfortable in one or the other. Cressida bridged that divide. She was a thoughtful and competent commissioner. Yes, there are some things that she could have done differently, could have done better. I'm not sure she was too happy with talking via the media. But of course, the only way the commissioner actually gets to speak to her 30,000 officers is through the medium of the public media. And I don't think that's recognised as much as it should be.
OK. Peter Kirkham, former DCI with the Met. Really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder how the ordinary police officer feels about the headlines that are about Cressida Dick this morning, saying that she gets a £500,000 golden handshake and a pension of 160 grand. That's what they're reporting in the papers today, which is an incredible, actually. I mean, how many people watching at the moment would love a pension of 160 grand a year, but also a golden handshake of £500,000?
Yeah, I don't understand golden handshakes. I don't know how they come about particularly. But if you are a police officer and you want to get in touch, we will obviously just make a note that you're a police officer and we'll keep it anonymous for you, because we won't want you to get into any trouble. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, coming up, we've got plenty more of the stories that matter to you and, of course, your views.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 7:27. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio.
Yeah, so take us with you if you're going out this morning.
Whatever.
Take us with us, I don't know, whatever. But
Stay
yeah,
together.
Yeah, pop the radio on, is what I'm saying. Now, a woman in Northumberland is on a personal mission to remove stigma around stomas.
After a traumatic experience during labour, Jill Castle from Alnwick is now trying to encourage more people to speak out openly about their difficulties during pregnancy and birth. Our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney went to Beadnell Beach to meet her.
Jill Castle walks proudly with her stoma, determined to promote body positivity post-pregnancy. Her stoma was fitted after she suffered major complications during a premature birth a decade ago. Her baby was delivered 6 weeks early, weighing just 4.7 pounds. During labour, her son's heart rate dropped and she was seriously injured by the delivery, which needed forceps.
You know, I was in a really, really bad way. I had PTSD, severe anxiety, postnatal depression, had an awful lot of physical and mental problems. But after about 3 years, I decided that I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life like this, and I decided that I was going to embrace living with a stoma and find out all the things that I could do, which essentially is whatever you want.
Jill changed her outlook after receiving support from the Birth Trauma Association, which encourages women to talk about pregnancy and birth openly to end the stigma.
Even with more minor injuries, women quite often either don't seek help for them or they do seek help. And then what happens is they're told that pain is normal, for example, after childbirth, and they shouldn't make a fuss about it and they should just get on with it. Suffering in silence is really, really awful, and women shouldn't be made to just kind of accept pain, whether it's physical, psychological, as a normal part of being a mother, because it's really not, and there is help out there.
Jill says the support she's received has helped her overcome major challenges. She raised £20,000 for charity through skydiving. She's completed a diving course, triathlons, open water swimming, and has even climbed Ben Nevis. And if that list wasn't impressive enough, Jill is going to attempt to be the first person with a stoma to swim the English Channel. She says she's doing it to give hope to mothers who are feeling overwhelmed.
What I would like to happen in the future is that people can just be more honest about how difficult it is to have a baby and what it's like once you've had a baby. Let's face it, it's really, really tough. And just because you're finding it tough doesn't mean that you're not a good mum. You can find it tough, but you're still awesome.
Jill says it's time to talk and there are people to listen. Rachel Sweeney, GB News, Northumberland.
I think that's wonderful.
Very brave.
I just think, isn't it amazing that we still have stigmas over some things, which, after all, only operations. We're all human beings. We have bodies that occasionally bits of it don't work. Why there should be stigmas about certain things?
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant, overcoming stigma of stoma.
Anything to do with going to the loo.
Yeah, it's something that... Is it a very British thing? We all get so, het up about it, don't we?
I can understand it, but then...
I can understand it, but...
You've got to live your life, haven't you?
But it's thanks to people like Jill who actually, occasionally just say, no, I'm going to make it worth talking about. And I just think that's wonderful. She's so brave. And, swimming the Channel, I think, is,
Well,
why would you... Exactly. But good on her, because she just makes it more and more easy to talk about. That's the point, isn't it?
Quite right. Quite right too. Look, stay with us here on GB News. It is very nearly 7:32 and we're going to take you through the papers in a couple of minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
$7:34. Good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We are live across the whole of the UK on your TV and your radio, but there are some places. Technology is amazing, ladies and gents. Just in case you might not be a fan of tech, I love it. And what we can do now, don't ask me how, is see where a lot of you are. We can't see, but we can see where you're watching.
You mean we can
from.
see? Yes.
Yeah.
So we can see what areas of the country lots of people are watching us.
At the moment. And so this is a special hello to you this morning. If you are in Norfolk, Nottingham, where I went to uni, love Nottingham, Liverpool, good on Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Belfast, Bristol, Swansea, Hull, that should be my nephew watching at uni there, if he's up.
Do you think it's just him? Hi.
But then also Hounslow, Luton, Leeds, Dundee, Derry, Kent, Lincoln and Somerset.
Well, that's brilliant. That's just about everywhere covered.
It's just about everywhere covered. I need to see Barrow-in-Furness on that list, please, if you're in Barrow. But isn't that really good that we can actually see where you are this morning?
That is amazing.
We want to know all...
We'll be looking into your homes next.
Oh, no.
Big Brother is watching you.
But it's really nice just to know where you are and what you're doing. And if you want to get in touch and just say hello, or if you want to send us a picture of yourself, or show us where you're watching, what your lounge or your kitchen.
Or tell us how you were scammed. We've been talking about scams. Tell us how you might have been scammed and what happened as a result. Did they get any money out of you?
And also, if you're worried about all the COVID restrictions going, are you happy to get that bit of freedom back, or like some people getting in touch this morning, a little bit apprehensive, a little bit concerned? Get in touch. You can tweet us at GBNews, or
you can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. Why is that still difficult to say?
I don't know.
Because it's dead easy. It makes sense.
It's quite a clever email address, I think. Oh, there you go, look.
No, it is clever. It is, and it is on the screen. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But I always get it wrong, and I'm not the only one, because Eamon got it wrong in the middle of the week too.
Did he?
I watched him, yeah.
Shocking.
I know.
Appalling.
So should we take a look at today's front pages very quickly? The Express leads with the advice from the Foreign Office telling Britons to get out of Ukraine now.
The Independent follows it up, saying their fears of a Russian invasion that could begin at any time, following a warning from the White House.
The Guardian is reporting that the Treasury is pushing for an end to nearly all COVID testing as soon as possible in a bid to save billions. The plan's being discussed despite warnings from public health experts and scientists.
The PM has been told by top Tories not to try to cling to power if the police investigation into lockdown parties finds that he broke COVID laws. That's in the Eye Weekend.
So let's go through the papers now, and joining us this morning are Andrew Eborn and Petri Hoskin. And
morning to you both.
Good morning. Yes,
Good morning,
we're starting with you, Andrew, because of the Duchess of Cornwall.
Yeah, fantastic story. We're talking about doom and gloom and heating versus eating, all that sort of stuff. There are solutions. And I'm a trustee and director of a company called UK Harvest. And the idea of UK Harvest is to educate people about food, because half the world is starving, but there's enough food to feed everybody.
So we're equally distributed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what we do at UK Harvest, it's a redistribution platform, but we also educate people about food. And the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla, is our patron and has been since 2017. Oh. And this week we opened the Nourish Hub. And the Nourish Hub is basically open for all sorts of people in the community, can come along. It's a donation-based system where you can pay what you can afford. We basically produce food with surplus food and so on and so forth. And we basically have that sort of side where we're educating the populace to do that. We've already saved 1,500 tonnes of food, which would otherwise gone to waste. About 5 years ago, with Jamie Oliver, we launched this thing about, you might remember, wonky vegetables that people used to throw away. And we had that whole sort of campaign to say, look, don't bin it, spin it. You know, you work on that sort of principle where educate people about food.
Now there is a lovely, we've just shown it, I don't know if we can bring it up again, lovely picture of the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla, we're talking about, of course, looking very happy.
Waving
of course,
flowers.
Last week, wasn't it, we learned that the Queen has said she wants to make sure that when Prince Charles becomes king, she will be a queen. What did she speak about that?
Well, this was the first time, apart from everything else, this is why Hello Magazine, virtually all the press have covered it, because it's the first time that Camilla commented on the Queen's statement
and
last week.
What did she say?
And she basically said she is going to be very honoured and very touched, the words that she used. And I have to say, Camilla was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. She went round a room full of people, and we had residents and trustees and various other people from the charity, people from Hammersmith and Fulham Council all there as well. And she went round to absolutely everybody and spent time with them. And I've met her a few times, and she is charm itself. And I know there's, you always go these things with the press, they go through cycles. But now this sort of charm offensive is totally there. She's very genuine, she genuinely cares about what's happened, and this is such a great cause that she's involved with.
I like her. I like her a lot.
I've come round.
Well, I just like the way they seem to make each other laugh.
Yes,
they're always on the verge.
She makes him
of
happy,
cracking
as it
up.
were, and that has to be.
They always have a very, very.
And it's a great way because Philip used to do that as well. Philip was the Queen with the perfect partnership, and she was always the warm-up. He was always the warm-up guy for the Queen. You go into a room, he would warm up the room, and then Her Majesty would go round. Superb double act. A superb double act for the future. Charles and Camilla.
Oh, good. Like me and Petri.
Yeah.
Hey.
We're very naughty.
We are very naughty.
They are very naughty.
It's because I've known you for far too long.
Far too long.
We shouldn't go into that.
Can we look
at that on at some point?
Can we look at the special relationship with the weirdness?
I loved this story, and it's quite deep into the paper, but it just made me laugh because, you know, we're supposed to have this special relationship with America, aren't we? And you know, and we wondered why Joe Biden is not that warm towards us, is he? Really, he really doesn't care that much. But it's because it seems that his mother hated the English so much that she even refused to sleep in a bed that the Queen may have only possibly slept in, choosing instead to sleep on the floor.
Yes.
So, I mean, unbelievable. But she also...
Is it something to do with the history of us, the Americans?
She just hated the English. And a lot of people now say, well, this obviously feeds through to your children, doesn't it? So her poems described how God must smite the English and rain blood on their hearts. I mean, she really detested us. And like I said, she chose to sleep on the floor because somebody couldn't guarantee that the Queen hadn't slept in the bed that she was about to sleep in.
No, but she might have slept on the floor, though.
Queen might have slept on the floor, that's what I would have said.
Yeah.
Hey, Mum. Queen slept all round this room.
Why be so horrible about it?
I mean, it's just...
Well, we burned the White House down once, didn't we? And they've never really forgiven us for it.
Well,
Well, I wonder
It was just that. But it was a long time ago.
But we have a special
Get over
relationship
it,
now.
Joe.
Have a special relationship now, which they've spoken about for years. So I think America.
Biden can't. I don't think he can abide us.
Very good. Yeah.
But Trump can, and he will always talk about his Scottish heritage and so on.
Oh,
and so
deep
forth.
joy.
Is that just because he wants to get another golf
We haven't had
course?
Joe over for a sort of royal visit, have we?
But I think I'm not
COVID, I
sure.
suppose.
There's been lots of problems, haven't there, since he came to that position, and I'm not sure he's aching to meet us.
No, clearly
Maybe not. Maybe not. What about the Times weekend, Andrew, looking at mental health
Another
problems?
great story. The Big Ask did a report, which was released this week by the Children's Commission of England, that 1 in 6 children are believed to suffer from mental health issues. And mental health, we need to now be the generation that talks about these issues so that we can be the generation that talks about it so the next generation don't suffer the stigma.
What do we mean by mental health? Are we saying that the situation is worse for them than it has been for anybody else? Or just that we're recognising?
It's a really good point, because we're talking about anxiety now, and they're talking about with everything. When people used to get bullied in the old days, you go to school, you get bullied, you come home, that might be your safe haven. Nowadays, you've permanently got your phone, your bullying follows you everywhere you go. Anxiety has gone through the roof as a result of things like social media. People's body image is influenced by what they see. They talk about that being one of the problems. Again, looking at not just the problems but the solutions. If you recognise what the problem is, that people are suffering out there. The Times has got this fantastic supplement, How to Have Happier Kids. But it's not just about happier kids, it's actually about everybody can do this. Let's talk about the issues, because you cannot solve a problem unless you recognise it as a problem in the first place.
But there's also a point, isn't there, that if you tell somebody that they're anxious, that they should be anxious, that everybody else is anxious, that especially children, that then there is an anxiety that follows. I'm not saying there aren't anxious children, but I think parents have got a lot to do with this. Certainly middle-class children, they've forced them to do. They don't have any downtime. They're always at a club or doing extra studies or doing homework after homework after homework. And I think a lot of parents put that pressure on their children to try and get into the good schools or to get into, good universities, to get on with. And often you just got to sit back and go, what does this individual child need? I mean, my son was not keen at school.
Right.
He's doing all right for himself.
And you're right, because anxious parents create anxious children.
Absolutely.
And
Should children be a bit more resilient?
Oh, no, but resilience, absolutely. You can't put people in cotton wool. You have to prepare people for the world. The world is a rotten place.
Yeah,
it's also a great place as well.
And that's what worries me, Stephen, is what you've just said, is that there is a tendency to put... we're allowed to be sad, we're allowed to be miserable, we're allowed to feel a bit anxious. Those are normal.
Yeah.
To medicalise them or to terrorise them, I don't think does anybody any favours.
One initiative which I helped set up as well is something called canned laughter. It's OK not to be OK. And it's exactly to that point where you're recognising that there are issues. A worrying statistic from the Prince's Trust, they did some research, and they found out, I think it was like 46% of teenagers felt inadequate about their body because of what they've seen on social media and so on and so forth.
It's very common.
We all did, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a tendency to sort of, I don't want to say over-dramatise it, but every teenager is anxious and teenage angst. I mean, and teenagers are...
And it was always
the
there.
teenagers.
Yeah.
It's always been there. And I do find teenagers like aliens. They're a really weird bunch of people.
They are, but thankfully they usually grow out of it.
Grow out of it, but they are strange, and it's no wonder they're anxious.
But if you talk to people about it and say, look, this is perfectly normal, not to feel normal, I think that's okay. What I also love is, and the people who are iconic at the moment, so you have the Duchess of Cambridge as well. She's just reading tomorrow night. She's doing CBeebies A Bedtime Story. And they start talking about their mental health issues and about being scared in the dark. It's about an owl that's scared in the dark. And you can talk about it's okay. Yeah. It's perfectly normal.
See, you just
talk
said
about things.
Scared in the dark is a mental health issue.
I was going to say that it can't be.
No, that's
well, it's but it depends on how you label things.
Yeah, exactly. It's over-medicated, and it becomes
forget
an issue.
I'm not a fan of labels. Things that cause stress on your sort of life, talk about. If you're scared of the dark, that's fine. Let's talk about other people who are scared as well. Here are coping mechanisms, and if you start looking at those coping mechanisms, that's what you share.
I used to hide under the blanket.
I'll tell you what, let's have some really positive news for Petrie.
Go on, then.
Because Petrie is as sharp as a tack, ladies and gentlemen. And she's going to stay as sharp as a tack well into her old age.
Yes.
Because in the Petrie, in the Telegraph, it says
I think it should be called the Petrie.
Too much knowledge can clog the brain and crowd out memories of old age.
Yes. I'm going to be fine. I'll be all right, because I've got enough knowledge.
No.
I was going to say
Too much knowledge can clog the brain.
I was going to say something really rude then. I remembered that we're not actually...
No, we are on television.
Yes,
and the radio.
This is a great story, because I don't know about you, but there are times when I just can't remember things. And now I can say it's because I've got too much knowledge.
Yeah.
So there's too much knowledge in my brain. And when you suddenly have to think of something...
That's why you can't think
straight.
Of it. Yeah. I can't think
straight. There's too much going on.
I've got too much knowledge.
And do you walk, when you walk from one part of the house, you think, I must go and do that.
Absolutely.
And then you forget what you're going to do. It's because your brain is
it's fast forwarded to the next thing. That's why.
And of course it is complete rubbish. There's no such thing as too much knowledge. What it is people are not compartmentalising in the right way. The brain's capacity, we only use a tiny percentage of our brain.
Oh, you might.
Hey.
I think I use all of mine.
Learn how to assimilate that information, how to store it in an appropriate way, and then you can absolutely conquer the world.
No. Yes, we have too much knowledge, Anne. Yeah, that's what it is.
I can't be bothered to compartmentalise my brain, to be honest, but there you go. Look, Petrie, Andrew, really good to see you both this morning. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Absolutely.
I forget stuff all the time.
Oh, yeah, always, when you go up the stairs.
Yeah.
When you come down the stairs, you go in the kitchen. What did I come in here for? Well, it happens all the time. Then you go to the fridge and there's always something in the fridge that will remind you.
Fair point. Normally the car keys, in my case.
I'm still looking for I've lost my car keys. I'm sorry, I'm coming over all potty this morning, aren't I? I fell for a scam and now I've lost my car keys. I'm having to retrace my steps all the time to try and find them. Car won't work without them.
No, it won't.
No. Weird, that. 7:48. A great-grandmother in West Yorkshire has been running a convenience store in a tiny hamlet for nearly half a century.
Maystock's shop near Hebden Bridge has been supplying hikers and isolated villagers with goods since 1974, opening her doors from 7 in the morning to 9 in the evening every day except Christmas.
Anna Riley went along to speak to May to find out what's made her business such a staple, located in a place where there's actually more sheep than people.
Nestled at the top of a valley above Hebden Bridge in a remote corner of Yorkshire lies Maystock's shop. The locals call it an Aladdin's cave, and inside it's packed with everything you'd need. The store has been run by the 81-year-old great-grandma since the 1970s, first set up as a refreshment stop for walkers along the nearby Pennine Way, one of Britain's most popular hiking routes.
Well, it's a lifeline for a lot of them, because it's a long way. It's 240-odd miles from beginning to end, and a lot of it's worse than this. So if you can just do and get them on the way, and it makes them, give them a bit more encouragement to keep going.
Even though the area is so remote, with the rise of Airbnb and the amount of walkers, there's never been a day when someone doesn't call in for something.
We have a favourite walk over here, and it's great because we don't have to carry our lunch. We can come and have a lovely sandwich or a pie and a lovely big hot of tea. Hot cup of tea. Yeah. That's what we like.
But it isn't just tourists who rely on May's shop. It's crucial to the small but spread out community and for isolated people in this remotest corner of the Calder Valley.
A lot of them are elderly and they won't have seen anybody for perhaps a week or something like that, because milkmen don't go now like they used to do they? And no, they come and we have a buffet and they just sit on the buffet and we make them a brew and and they change, you can see when they're going out, the faces, they're happy. I've just done it so long, it's just part of life. And I've had a good life, so that's all that matters, isn't it? It's true Yorkshire grit, it just keeps us going, plodding on. Keep smiling.
So, despite May running the shop for half a century, she's certainly got no plans for retirement yet. Anna Riley, GB News, Calden.
That's
She's
lovely.
young at heart. She's got a very young voice.
Yes, she has,
Yeah.
and a lovely giggle. But it's the shop that is keeping her going, isn't it? That's
brilliant.
what it's all about.
Love it. I'll tell you what keeps me going, and that's a little dose of entertainment from Stephanie Tetchy every weekend. Morning.
Morning, guys.
Look, Adele.
Oh,
Every
gosh.
week we're talking
I
about
know.
Adele.
I was, this morning I was thinking it is really Adele overload, but she's had a triumphant homecoming this week. So earlier this week, we saw her pick up 3 Brits at the Brit Awards, and she was quite subdued on the night because there wasn't really any after parties or anything. But on Thursday night, she let loose. So she went to Heaven nightclub, and she was judging their version of Pop Idol, which they call Porn Idol. Sorry, guys, so early in the morning. But yeah, she got on the pole and started pole dancing and stripped down to her bra. So Adele's gone a bit wild.
She was noticeably. She'd had 1 or 2 drinks.
Yeah, she did. I think by the end of the night she was feeling a bit emotional.
Yeah.
She said she hadn't drank since October, so clearly it got to her and she was celebrating. But earlier on, before this appearance, she was actually on Graham Norton, which was on TV last night, and she finally lifted the lid on what's happened with Las Vegas, and she said she is working on getting the show done this year.
Was she okay on the programme? She
she was good.
She hadn't had 1 too many in the
Oh,
in
no,
the
she
green
was
room.
very sober. I think that's why she went out to celebrate afterwards.
It's so sad because some of the pictures, and obviously they're paparazzi pictures and they're designed to sort of catch you at looking at your worst, but she does look pretty awful.
She does. She just feels like she's let loose. But, during the interview with Graham Norton yesterday, she was saying that she wants to kind of shed this image of her being so private. So I think maybe we're going to be seeing more of these kind of Adele escapades in the future, because I think she just wants to show the real Adele.
How old is she?
She's 33, yeah. But there's a reason...
I mean, so young. I just think she's had all this pressure on her for such a long time. I mean, down to her, I mean, she's a huge talent. And so the pressure comes with the fame and the money, doesn't it? But 33, I don't want to sort of to do a Britney. You know what I mean?
I know, but it's the...
It looked like a Britney.
It does look like a
one.
Britney, but I feel like she's got her head on her shoulders in a weird way. But as well, I think she's trying to move away from the whole Las Vegas thing and bring the fun Adele, and she's said that she may potentially be engaged to her boyfriend now.
Well, she was wearing an engagement ring, which has got everybody talking.
Yeah, she didn't confirm yesterday on Graham Norton, but she did confirm that she is hoping to have another baby next year. So maybe she's just going wild before she has to settle down again.
Maybe. Now, we've been talking about scams this morning. What's going on with Ian McKellen and scams?
Sir Ian McKellen, he would be so hard to impersonate, you would think that. But he went on Twitter yesterday to say that there's an impersonator that's been going around pretending to be him, along with 2 fake agents, charging people to get private signings from him. So up to 400 fans have paid between £75 and £200 to get signings from this fake impersonator of Sir Ian McKellen. And he's like, that's not me. I would always do signings for free for charity or for if people sent things directly to me. So he only found out from a promoter who said that he had been approached by this impersonator. And, it's quite scary because you would think everyone would know who Sir Ian McKellen is.
Well, if it's a good impersonator.
Yeah.
And he does look older nowadays, which, I guess some impersonators would find easier to scam. It's a scam.
Any viewers?
It's odd because Ian McKellen made this wonderful movie called The Good Liar about a scammer.
Yeah.
But you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen
it's
it,
such a brilliant movie. It's called The Good Liar.
Yeah.
And Dame Helen Mirren is in it as well, so you can tell how good it is.
Yeah. Art imitating knife, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. So watch out.
Oh, dear. Well, Stephanie, thank you very much indeed. We should catch up with you a little bit later on. Go and dig out some more goss for us.
I will do. Don't worry.
It's just coming up to 7:56. Do stay with us because we've got plenty more to come in the next hour, including your views from around the country. First of all, though, the weather.
Start off your GB News Sunday with Stephen and Anne at breakfast from 6 a.m. At 10, Michael Portillo joins the political correction. From 12 till 6, it's Alistair, Darren and Nana. At 7, join Free Speech Nation for a laugh that won't be cancelled. At 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight, followed by Headliners. That's Sunday on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. A very different start to the day compared to yesterday. Yesterday was frosty but bright in many places. Today it's frost-free but windy and, in some locations, wet. Spells of rain are expected through the weekend. These weather fronts across the UK, stretching all the way back to the mid-Atlantic, they're going to continue to pile in throughout today and tomorrow. So, well, increasingly damp really across northern and western parts of England as well as Wales. The rain turning heavier and more persistent across Wales and northwest England into the afternoon. Drier and brighter ahead of that for East Anglia, the southeast, parts of the East Midlands, central southern England, but increasingly breezy and cloudy. Sunny spells coming through for Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery showers here. 10 Celsius for Belfast, 8 for Manchester, 8 for London. Similar to yesterday, but not feeling very pleasant because of the wind and the rain. Coastal gales around Irish Sea coasts, and then the rain eventually sinks into southern England during the evening. Easing off for a time before further spells of heavy rain push back into Wales and the southwest by dawn tomorrow. Drier to the north with some clear spells for Scotland, also a few showers, and frost-free tomorrow morning once again. But it soon goes downhill. Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, much of England and Wales sees wet and windy weather returning. Coastal gales for the south coast, heavy and persistent rain, particularly over parts of Wales, and the rain for the higher parts of Wales really mounting up through Saturday and Sunday. 60 and in some places 100 millimetres of rain could cause disruption. But it's looking damp everywhere, but it is milder, 10 or 11 Celsius in the south, colder for Scotland, 8 Celsius at best here. Brighter skies for the north of Scotland, just a few showers. And that bright, showery weather in the north of Scotland tends to become more widespread on Monday and into Tuesday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. We wondered who was going to say it first. Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on February the 12th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We are live across the whole of the UK on TV and on your radio, online, where just about anywhere you are this morning. And don't forget, if you are popping out, you can turn the TV off and put the radio on so you don't have to miss a thing. Coming up today,
Joe Biden is going to speak to the Russian President Vladimir Putin today in a last-ditch effort to avert war in Ukraine after a week of failed diplomatic efforts by European nations. We'll ask the UK's former ambassador to Russia what he would say to Putin.
also coming up on the programme, after England and Wales drop some or all of their COVID restrictions, what about Northern Ireland? We'll be finding out how the collapsed Stormont Assembly is stalling the lifting of measures.
And we'll go to Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire to speak to a great-grandmother who has been running a village shop for almost half a century, only taking time off on Christmas Day.
We want to hear from you this morning. We really do. Loads of you are getting in touch. Keep them coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. And we're going to run through some of these in just a second.
We were talking earlier about how wonderful technology is, the fact that we can tell who's watching, or not who's watching us, but from which region of the country you're watching. And it's really interesting for us to know who's watching, actually.
Yeah, and so many of you got in touch this morning. Sarah. Morning, Sarah. I am indeed watching from Barrow-in-Furness. Oh, morning to you. I love GB News with its varied views. And actually, on the back of that, Jim is also in Barrow. He's on Rampside, which I know very well.
Rampside in Cumbria.
Rampside, yeah. So it's just like a little bit off Barrow, near Walney, on the way to sort of Peel Island and all around that way.
And John and Lynn say, I'm very sorry to hear East Sussex not mentioned amongst your viewing audience. We've been watching you from Seaford in East Sussex since you started. Since you started, not since you started. Do you get what I'm... Sorry,
yes,
the inflection.
Yes.
Really enjoy your channel, especially Anne and Stephen and Eamon and Isabel during the week. Do keep up the good work. There you are. We've mentioned you.
Yeah, Seaford. I've been to Seaford many times. I had a friend who lived in Seaford. Went to a wedding in Seaford.
You've been everywhere.
I get out and about.
Have you been to Brechin in Scotland? Brechin? Is it Brechin? Brechin? Or Brechin? It sounds like. John McLaughlin has said hi and he's watching from there.
Yeah, Wendy, good morning. Well, Graham and Wendy, in fact. Graham and Wendy Beck. Could we get your full name?
In Solihull.
Solihull, yeah. Actually, against Solihull, what a great place.
Yeah, I know Solihull well. Susan and David said, loving your weekend show, best ever. We're flying the flag from Anne's hometown of Oxford. We live in Wheatley, used to live very near Wheatley, and they love it. Oh, and Stephen is in Malta. Oh. He said, I just wanted to drop in to say hello to Anne and Stephen on this Saturday morning. I love Malta. Lucky thing, I bet the sun is shining.
Never been.
Any minute
Mind you,
now.
how about this? Good morning, says Beth, or evening. Rather than having breakfast with you both, I have my dinner listening to your programme from here on the Australian East Coast. Wow, you're both a delight to watch. I cannot imagine a better company as the sun sets on the river and the mountains behind me.
Oh, you make me homesick for Australia. What a great job, she says, you both do, and most of all, your common sense and empathy to your audience. So engaging. Rock on, GB News.
Yeah, sorry, Beth, it's not empathy with you, it's jealousy.
Yeah, it is, actually.
Frankly. There you go. I've never been to Australia. I would love to go.
It is brilliant. Totally brilliant place.
Got to mention Simon as well. Morning, Simon. I think you missed somewhere in the southeast in your roundup.
Sorry.
We're in Farnham in Surrey and watching you. I think we've got a picture. There you are.
Oh, look, we're up high.
Oh, look at that drum kit as well.
Yeah, no, I love your conservatory. Very nice, thank you.
Very, very swish.
Yeah, but there we are, up on the big screen.
Morning to you. Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara's watching in France, and I think she might have sent a picture as well. No. Yes? No.
Oh, no.
But that's what we'd love to see pictures, actually, of maybe us on your TVs, just to illustrate where you are at the moment in the UK or elsewhere in the world. We would love to hear from you, see some lovely pictures.
Or if you're feeling brave, take a picture of yourself.
Yeah.
In front of the TV.
Yeah.
Because then we get to know what you look like.
Yeah, why not?
It's all about knowing who you are. And we call ourselves the GB News family. And it really feels like a family working here, I can tell you. And you're part of that family, the crucial part of that family. It especially
feels like a family to us when you get in touch.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise we're sitting in the studio and we don't know if we're talking to anyone. And the fact that you get in touch is very reassuring, actually.
And
so,
lots of you get in touch. And it's the best part of our day, isn't it? To see all these emails keep Look at them.
I mean, tons of them.
Pages and pages and pages of them. I mean, it's brilliant. So do keep your thoughts coming through.
Shall I finish off with one final one from Karen, which is so nice? She said, "Morning, I just want to say you two are my cuddle blanket. I wake up every day, I have insomnia, and I look forward to the weekend when you two are presenting." Isn't that lovely? Thank you so much. I know what you mean.
And actually, we've got to mention the radio side of this as well, because, of course, you can get us on your radio on DAB+, or you can download the Radio Player app, and we're on TuneIn as well.
That's a new one on me, TuneIn.
Oh, yeah, that TuneIn. You get that TuneIn on the car, actually. But on Radio Player, we are now trending on Radio Player because so many of you are listening to us. So if you are listening on the radio, but particularly on Radio Player this morning, thank you. Thank you very much for tuning in. It makes it all worthwhile.
Can I ask a very simple question?
Yes, you can.
What does it mean when you're trending?
It means lots of people are listening to you. So it's like going up the charts.
Oh, OK, great.
It's like we're nearly #1 now.
Oh, that's doing quite well then. Thank you very much. Keep listening.
Now, to our main news for you this morning, however you're getting us today, the United States are to evacuate their embassy in Kiev amid threats of Russia invading Ukraine.
Yesterday, the Foreign Office warned UK nationals to leave Ukraine with immediate effect after Boris Johnson expressed his fears for the security of Europe.
Well, in an attempt to diffuse escalations, the US President Joe Biden will later call the Russian leader Vladimir Putin, despite sources saying Moscow has already decided to move forward with an invasion.
Well, earlier on in the programme, we spoke to the former British ambassador to Russia, Sir Tony Brenton. Here's what he had to say.
This is the climax of several weeks now of a building up of tension as Russians have built up their forces around Ukraine. The question is what Putin has in mind. One explanation is that he's always intended to reincorporate Ukraine into Russia, and that's what's about to happen. I personally think that's unlikely, that what he's really about is trying to get the West to respond to various demands that he's put to the West about keeping Ukraine out of NATO and so on. And what we're approaching now is the eyeball-to-eyeball moment when Biden and Putin, Biden either concedes some of the demands that Putin has made, although not, I'm sure, not in the form that they've been put, and they do a deal, or they don't, in which case he will certainly act militarily against Ukraine. You can't exclude anything, but I really don't believe that Putin wants to go to war. Putin's a very cautious foreign policy operator. I know him. He's cold, he's calculating, but he doesn't take big risks. And invading Ukraine would be a very big risk. So he would far prefer for the West to concede some of the things that he's asking for, so he can go back to his own guys back in the Kremlin and say, look, we've got this out of this operation. I've done well for Russia. Now let's begin to demobilize. And he's demonstrating the amount of tension and anxiety that he can cause. And the objective of doing that is his view that the West has ignored, ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's demands for security guarantees of one sort or another. And the only way he can get the West to listen is through this sort of operation. Putin, in the interchange in a phone conversation, the ability of outsiders to get their principles to say what they think they should say is really rather limited. Putin is, in the Russian context, is pretty close to flying solo. He has advisors and he listens to them, but finally the policy is made by him. Biden actually has very good people around him and has on the whole listened to them. So this won't be just two blokes talking to each other. It will be more of an interchange between US policy, the US foreign policy establishment on the one hand, and Putin on the other. I've been in an embassy in Moscow. Things can get very tense, and you do automatically think about dependents and non-crucial people who are attached to the embassy. You have a responsibility for their safety, and if you really think there's a danger, then you get them out. And that's quite a clear sign, in the case of the Americans who are now doing that in Kiev, that they really are concerned about the current situation. And you worry also about your nationals in the country concerned. And the Americans have very good reason to be worried about their nationals, because if they don't get the vast majority of them out, if the Russians do invade, the Americans might find themselves under pressure to send in their own troops to look after their nationals, at which point you've got US troops fighting Russian troops. You're on the edge at that point of World War III, which obviously everybody wants to avoid. So that's another reason for getting your nationals out. In Moscow, there's very little sign of any public reaction. Of course, the press there is very pro Putin, pro-regime, but there's very little in the press about the prospects of war with Ukraine, other than charges against the West for trying to foster it. And in Ukraine, it is striking how calm the national mood has remained through all of this, which is another rather strong reason in my mind for believing that we're not quite about to go over the precipice yet. However it ends is going to make it still worse. And we, the UK, have now the worst relations that we've had with Russia since the end of the Cold War. And what happened to poor old Liz Truss when she was over there on Thursday is a sign of how basically they don't take us seriously and they're very ready to humiliate us given the opportunity.
Well, that was Sir Tony Brenton, who's the UK's, formerly the UK's ambassador to Russia.
Well, Sergei Markov is a former advisor to Vladimir Putin and director of Institute for Political Studies in Moscow, and he joins us now. A very good morning to you. I mean, you are in that situation where you know President Putin better than most of us, and we're all trying to guess what he really wants out of all of this. Is this a man who is really pushing for war?
First of all, I would say that Tony Brenton, we told before me, very wise politician. And we want Great Britain will have such political leader as Tony Brenton, but not as Boris Johnson. And it's first. Secondly, Russian demands it's very simple. Kiev repressive regime, which we very strongly divide from Ukrainian people. Kiev regime should implement Minsk agreement, which he signed in the beginning of 2015, and which he violated every day during these years, and which, by the way, have been approved by decision of United Nations Security Council. Its first demand. If Kiev repressive regime will not implement this Minsk agreement now, Russia will be ready to recognize Donetsk People Republic and Lugansk People Republic, who uprisal against neo-Nazi and Russophobia, which now in power in Kiev. And if Ukrainian army will start attack, a Russian army will help to the Donbas people to protect their lives and their freedom. It's first demand, but it's not only. We also demand from Ukraine denazification and stopping of political dictatorship. All political prisoners should be liberated in Ukraine, but there are thousands of them. And all neo-Nazi groups which used by Kiev repressive regime for the terror against Ukrainian people should be disarmed, and glorification of neo-Nazism should be prohibited. Then free media, freedom of political activity should come back to Ukraine, and then free and fair elections and neutrality of Ukraine. I think it would be very good for Ukraine, and it's absolutely sure is supported, this Russian position, absolutely sure, is supported by a majority of people in Ukraine.
Forgive me for jumping in, but a lot of people are going to find it very difficult to consider Moscow calling for the end of, as you called it, a political dictatorship to allow for political freedoms in Ukraine, when, of course, many people argue that's exactly what is lacking in Russia.
It's, by the way, one of the indication of the crisis of European civilization that Europe and the United States are ignoring neo-Nazi in power in Kiev. Americans and Europeans made information blockade about numerous war crime and political repression in Ukraine, only because this repression against Russians. And a very simple example, the language of absolute majority of people in Ukraine is Russian language. Can you imagine that democratically people can support laws which prohibited Russian language? Can you imagine that people in Great Britain will democratically support prohibition of the official status of English language? Of course, it's absolutely impossible. You have to accept in Kiev, you are Great Britain, United States, European Union, impose a repressive regime which suppress people in Ukraine. As about clash between Russia and Ukraine, I don't think it will continue too long, not only because Russian army is more strong, but first of all, because most of the people and soldiers and officers in Ukrainian army, they believe that Russia is right. I remember you that in Crimea,
Sergei, our viewers and listeners, Sergei, pardon me for coming in here, but our viewers and listeners will hear this long list of problems that you're outlining, things that need to be sorted through, things that need to be discussed and agreed, negotiated, in other words. And yet we have troops on either side of the Ukrainian border almost poised for war. And that's what we are scared of. So what we're asking is, how likely is Mr. Putin likely to say, OK, we will go in, we will be aggressive? Because our press are talking about something possibly happening on Wednesday. And yet here you come out with a long list of things that clearly are going to take months of negotiation, if at all. So what's the answer? Is Mr. Putin going to press the button for war?
Your question, absolutely right. It's a question which is in the mind of the millions of people in the world. And our answer is very simple. Of course, negotiation is the best way. But we had negotiation, we had Minsk agreements, implement the Minsk agreement now. Also, we had very long negotiation about neo-Nazis in power in Kiev regime. We talked so many times about massive political repression in Ukraine. We have a lot of questions about prohibition of Russian language by Kiev repressive regime. But what was the answer of Western politicians? What was the answer of the United States? What was the answer of the Great Britain? What was the answer of the European Union? Get away. Keep silent. It doesn't matter. You are lying every time. If you ignore the real problem which exists in one of the biggest countries in Europe, meaning Ukraine, it's to put this country to the crisis, for sure.
So this isn't just a power grab then from President Putin, who we know has wanted to bring Ukraine back into Russia, just sort of reflection of the old USSR. It isn't just a power grab then?
For sure. No way to recover USSR. We doesn't think about this. Most of the republics doesn't want to do the exist as an independent country and so on. But people who appear to be under prohibition of their native language, and if majority, exactly in Crimea, in Odessa, in Kharkov, the people who speak Russian language, it's 90%. And the Kiev regime prohibits this language. If people have this problem, of course, they like to join Russia. And if not all Ukraine, but eastern and southern regions of Ukraine, if we have a referendum, I think they will be happy to join Russia so as Crimea. But at the same time, we don't want to take this territory to Russia. We want this country, these territories live in democracy and independence. And we ask our European and American friends, please recognize that you impose a repressive dictatorship on Ukraine. Please be together with us by moving Ukraine from power of neo-Nazis to the real democratic independent situation and neutral country. It's point for negotiation. Today, as we know, President Biden will give the call to the President Putin.
Yeah, do you have any hopes for that? Do you have any hopes of that phone call being successful?
I think it's a very high probability that this negotiation could be successful, and full implementation of the Minsk agreements is number one priority for Vladimir Putin right now. I myself been in Donetsk. I myself wake up 3 nights, every night, in the deep night because of shelling of Ukrainian territory, the parts suburb of Donetsk. Believe me, it's a very unhappy situation. Why it's happening every night? It should be stopped now.
Let's hope it does stop now. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Sergei Markov, who used to be a spokesperson for President Putin. Thank you for joining us.
I mean, it's fascinating to hear another perspective, whether you agree with it or not. Interesting, I'm just looking at Freedom House, which studies democracies and things, and it says Ukraine has had a number of positive reforms since Viktor Yanukovych was ousted as president in 2014. However, corruption remains endemic and initiatives to combat it are only partially implemented.
It's interesting you say how fascinating it is to hear the other side talking, but you still, it's so distressing to hear how very far apart, how polarised views are. I suppose that's where diplomacy comes in. And let's hope our diplomats are up to the mark, because something needs to be done, doesn't it?
How you begin to tackle something like that?
I don't know. No. How do you get people to sit down and see any area where they could possibly merge?
Yeah.
I don't know, or see each other's point of view. Anyway, let's bring you up to date with what else is going on at the moment. The Metropolitan Police has given the Prime Minister just 7 days to adequately explain his attendance at an event number 10 during COVID restrictions or face a fine. Downing Street have confirmed last night that Mr Johnson had received the legal questionnaire from officers and will respond.
The Taliban have released a British journalist they'd been holding for several days in Afghanistan. Andrew North was on assignment for the United Nations Refugee Agency, reporting on the country's humanitarian crisis.
Experts from SAGE are warning that lifting all COVID restrictions will have what they call a disproportionate impact on vulnerable people. It follows the Prime Minister's announcements that restrictions will end soon, including the need to self-isolate following a positive test.
Meanwhile, a charity is warning there's a hidden mental health crisis for older people, with millions having lost the confidence now to leave their homes. Age UK says the pandemic has had an alarming impact on the elderly, who are now experiencing anxiety, memory loss and disturbed sleep. Well, still to come on the programme this morning, we're going to be looking at how the collapse of the Stormont Assembly is stalling the lifting of COVID restrictions in Northern Ireland.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's 8:25. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne across the whole of the UK on your TV and on your radio.
Yeah, let's turn to Northern Ireland, interestingly, because there's been an angry backlash over the delay in lifting COVID restrictions in Northern Ireland because of the collapse of the government at Stormont. Health Minister Robin Swan says he's still waiting for legal advice about removing the remaining COVID regulations.
Well, for the very latest, here's our reporter, Doogie Beattie.
The consent principle is a cornerstone of the Belfast Agreement, and it is my earnest desire that all sections of the community will soon be able to give consent to the restoration of a fully functioning executive through a resolution to the issues that have regrettably brought us to this point.
The First Minister's resignation means that the Northern Ireland Government has no executive, so the Assembly has no ministerial powers and therefore authority to change legislation. The Health Minister is responsible for COVID restrictions and now finds himself taking legal advice to see if he can change them without executive support. Most of the restrictions are around retail and hospitality, two of the areas hit hardest by the Omicron regulations. Northern Ireland's courts already have a pending review on action taken singularly by the Agriculture Minister over EU checks in the ports. What's left of the government will be keen to avoid setting a precedent that allows those checks to halt. Minister Swan has written to all parties on ending COVID restrictions and expects a response no later than Monday. Doogie Beattie, GB News, Stormont.
Well, Doogie joins us now. Morning to you, Doogie. I mean, look, what is the position as we understand it this morning? What are politicians from all sides saying here?
Well, we have to be very careful what they are saying because the collapse of that executive has obviously sparked an election and a lot of electioneering going on. But just to explain to our viewers and listeners, the beautiful Portestone building that sits behind me here and most people will think of as the government of Northern Ireland, that's where MLAs are elected to. And depending on their electoral size, because it is a forced coalition under the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, they will be awarded ministries on the size of their electoral mandate here that then go and sit in the executive, the cabinet if you like, in Stormont Castle, just to the left of me. Now, each minister there must agree stuff coming to the table and then it has to be collectively put forward. So the Agriculture Minister, Edwin Poots, he did not like these checks on the Northern Ireland Protocol, stuff coming in from the EU, which then he stopped by himself. He took one ministerial, went for it singularly and said, I'm stopping these checks. The executive said it wasn't right. The First Minister then resigned, and once the First Minister or Deputy First Minister resigns, the executive collapses, which then leaves this behind me, this beautiful building here, as basically a zombie government. It has no brain and therefore it can only actually pass legislation that has already been on the floor and gone to the executive. Now, the Minister for Health has obviously all these COVID regulations in place and he wants to take a lot of them away. Ironically, the DUP, the largest party and the First Minister that resigned, didn't want half these regulations and fought about them at the time. So they have said, well, we have no problems with this. Jeffrey Donaldson, speaking at an anti-protocol rally the other night, didn't see any problems with taking this legislation away. The UUP, who's the Ulster Unionist Party, is the Health Minister, is afraid of starting and setting a legal precedent, basically, that will allow, if he does that singularly, then Edwin Poots' checks on the ports can then be brought back in. So it is really a political mess at this moment in time. But at the end of it all, the Justice Minister could just say, I'm sorry, we're not going to prosecute anybody. It is an option. We're not going to prosecute anybody if you do not follow those regulations. We've had the SDLP coming out saying that that the DUP's collapsing of this has caused everybody to go into a very bad place. And really and truly, it doesn't bode well for Northern Ireland at all. So we're really stuck in the middle, but I think it will just come to the point where the Justice Minister may say we're not going to prosecute anyone.
Meanwhile, of course, you're talking about the lifting of COVID restrictions, and people in Northern Ireland must be as anxious as everybody else to try and get past this pandemic and start to live a normal life again. So, I mean, what is the position? What are your restrictions at the moment, and how do they contrast, for instance, with your neighbours in the Republic of Ireland? Is it going to become very, very difficult if this goes on much longer, that, COVID restrictions are going to be different wherever you go?
Anne, you've hit it exactly on the head. We have had this problem with being close to the Republic of Ireland. We've had the introduction of COVID passports. Now, you didn't need that passport for certain places, you did need it for others. The Republic of Ireland coming up in had COVID passports a long time before we did. These passports cost £10 million to run for 5 weeks. What is legal and what is advice is very, very confusing. And it is very hard for people to understand. And so therefore, a bit like the rest of the UK, it is the uncertainty of what's legal, what's advice, and people, I think, just want it out of the road and over and done with.
Absolutely, as most of us do, of course. Well, maybe they'll sort it out in the end, but at the moment it looks ridiculous, doesn't it?
It does.
Thanks very much, Doogie. Looks a bit chilly there, but that is a magnificent building behind, even if it is a zombie parliament, as he was saying.
With no brain. It sounds very
Sounds
very
awful,
ominous, doesn't it? Stay with us. We've got plenty more to come for you here on Breakfast, including an in-depth look at the papers.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 8:34. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio.
Oh, yes, we are. Let's take you through the papers this morning. And we're joined by the lawyer and futurist Andrew Eborn and the broadcaster extraordinaire Petri Hoskin. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Futurist.
Oh, isn't that good? I'll tell you what a futurist is.
No, we'll be here all morning.
no, yes, oh God, yes, here we go.
We look at patterns in history, and because what happens, people say history repeats itself, and that's how we can predict the future. Which
Well, let's have a look, Andrew, at patterns on Colin the Caterpillar.
Well, Colin the Caterpillar is fascinating because he's just won, as I predicted as a futurist, his case has been settled out of court with his big fight against Cuthbert. And you remember, there was a big campaign last year because they basically said, look, Cuthbert and all these copy caterpillars, see what I did there? There are lots of them. There's Wiggles and Wriggles and all that
Because the original
sort of stuff.
caterpillar is Marks and Spencer's Colin.
That's right, 30 years old.
One of the most popular cakes for children's birthday parties
Absolutely.
ever.
Boris was ambushed by a Colin, I'm sure, but he worked on that sort of basis. But they've settled out of the court. The good thing is, for Valentine's Day, what they've now done is they've launched the first ever same-sex Colin the Caterpillar. So you can get 2 Colin the Caterpillars for Valentine's Day.
What? How do you know? How do you know that's their male?
Well, I'll tell you what, they make it easy for you because they're both called Colin. and the female one is called Connie. So normally Colin goes with Connie, and that's what happens. So you can get 2 Connies and 2 Collins for Valentine's Day for a tenner.
It's a breakthrough, isn't it? It's a social breakthrough.
But what's interesting as well, though, extraordinary.
With the genderising cake now, I mean, it just, look, if you want to buy it, that's great.
When I was little, caterpillars were just caterpillars.
Well, caterpillars don't have a gender.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, not until they become butterflies.
And they also don't partake in
But they wouldn't.
Horizontal
They're little ones,
dancing.
aren't they?
Yeah, they don't.
I'll tell you what's better, though, not caterpillars.
I can't believe we're having this conversation.
I'll tell you what's better, though. There's a centre in Helmsley, but rather than caterpillars, there are cockroaches. And what they're saying for Valentine's Day, rather than the romantic side, if you have a jilted lover or an ex, or you're not really feeling very romantic at all, you can name these cockroaches after your ex-lover. And they're raising money. Isn't that great? And they're raising money for their wonderful charities and so on and so forth as well. So name your cockroach after your jilted lover.
I think that's vitriolic,
So
and
do
I don't agree with vitriol.
All the wrong emotions there.
Yes, I'm all for positive.
Yeah.
Name one after you.
Yeah. You've got a cockroach, I bet you have. Let's have a look at the mail, Petri.
Yeah, now this is what's wrong with a lot of charities at the moment, and this is as well why I think that charities are struggling to get the donations that they need, and this includes the good ones, is because people have lost faith with how charities spend the money that we give them. And this is Naomi Campbell's charity, and it's called FFR, which is Fashion for Relief, and she's launched this charity. They spent £1.6 million on star-studded parties to get all these donors in, but they've only donated £200,000.
Yeah.
And this is why people don't trust charities. And a lot of the big ones, like the RSPCA, they got a ticking off for taking too many people to court and not doing what people gave them money for. Too many charities, actually, for me to mention, have abused the privilege of being a charity. And there's a lot of these little charities around at the moment that seem to... That was like with Captain Tom. Sir Tom, his charity, it was declared how much money was being spent on wages for people to work in the charity rather than people giving the money because they wanted it to go somewhere else.
These charities, when they've
there's
got
a lot of them.
But when there's a lot of money in the charity, it does need to
It's just a business.
But it does need to be run like a business. You do need someone at the top who's going to be experienced, who's therefore going to cost...
Yeah, but for example, with the NSPCC, you will see, the offices that they've got, they are extremely smart offices. Why do you need that? I mean, I agree you have to pay the financial controller a lot of money, perhaps, to make sure the money is spent. But when you're seeing that, they're getting company cars or they, expense this and expense that, it is not... It should be run like a business, but it isn't a business, it's a charity, and they rely on the public to give them money, to give to the poor or the needy, not to spend on chocolate biscuits for their coffee time.
Well, chocolate biscuit, I'm sure Naomi Campbell doesn't have chocolate biscuits, but the key is this, it's about transparency, isn't it? You're right, you need to run these professional organisations, and it's two things, it's raising money, but it's also raising awareness. And with charities, that's so often the case. Have transparency so it doesn't come out in the paper, this is what the profit was. Tell people what it costs to run these particular charities. And
well, there is a website,
message.
actually, and I'm struggling to remember the name of it, but where you can find out how much of your pound goes to the charity. And often it's a penny, because the rest of it is spent on admin. Sorry, not good enough. And this is why charities are struggling now to get donations, and rightly so.
And the sad thing is the good ones get penalised as a result.
Absolutely.
Yes,
so
they
that's
all
what
get tarred with the same brush.
Have transparency.
Yeah.
OK, now tell us about why space debris.
Oh, isn't this wonderful? I told you last year that this is going to be the year of discovery.
Have you noticed everything you say is a self-fulfilling prophecy?
It's a futurist, you see. This is what happens.
It's Saturday night, Andrew. What are the lottery numbers?
I'll tell you. Number 7 will definitely come up. What I will also tell you, however, James Webb, you remember that I talked about that they launched the satellite, and I said at the time we're going to discover parts of the universe we never thought that happened. Well, it's happened. Surprise, surprise. And today, in the paper, it says, space debris hints at a habitable planet, but it's only 688 trillion miles away. So all the different elements within it, there are parts of the world...
How many light years is it?
117.
Yeah, very good. Look at you reading over my shoulder.
It means it was habitable in the past. It don't mean it's habitable
no,
now.
not at all. And I think it would be arrogant, if you like, to think that we're the only planet that can have life. I think we are going to go on a journey of discovery. What I love is we're going to go back to the very beginning of time. And with the launch of this satellite, we're going to have a wonderful way of discovery. I also spoke last year about NATO has appointed a vicar to look at extraterrestrials. So it's not just God thinking about us on Earth, but God thinking about the whole universe.
I tell you what, why don't we look after this planet first before we go off and ruin another one?
Well, they might be saying that to the other planets as well.
The point is we won't get there in time to ruin it.
Exactly.
they're too far away.
No. I'm very disturbed by you, Pedro.
Are you?
In terms of what you're promoting today, because if you're married if you're married and you want to lose weight, how are the papers?
Well, I thought it was great for Valentine's Day. Have an affair. Have an affair. Married people wanting to lose their love handle should have an affair. So they find that when they're with their spouse, that they put on, pile on the pounds.
Is that just because they're happy? Perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, and it's also, there's not a 7-year itch anymore, it's a 10-year itch.
Was that right?
Yeah, I was reading that earlier.
Is that plus VAT?
It's inflation.
No, but I think, you know, if you want to appeal to someone else to be a bit, you know, you might lose a bit of weight.
Your act, don't you?
Yeah, you smarten up your act.
But the trouble is this, Petra, as a result...
Stephen.
Yeah, it's...
Crack on.
Yeah, but as a result, people who are now losing weight, having dieted for the first few months, they're now going to get accused of having an affair. So you've got to work it on sort of both sort of bases. I think if you are honest with each other and open and so on and so forth, you don't need to have an affair to lose weight.
What a terrible idea.
It just brings up an interesting thought conundrum. That if you're happy in your marriage, are you going to get a bit porkier? You know?
Yeah.
Do you get a bit fat and happy?
Maybe. I guess. Well, yeah, maybe.
Well, obviously.
Let's not get personal.
I mean, honestly.
Petra just pointed very pointedly
Petra.
at Stephen there.
Thank you.
He is, by the way, very slim and gorgeous.
I am. I've been on Slimming World and I've lost 2.5 stone.
Done extremely well. Yeah.
There you go.
What, from your wallet?
I was piling the pounds on when I was single.
Shall we stop with the accusations and...
She's nasty
Whatever.
to me. He's better
Actually,
it's only because I love him.
He's very lucky. Every woman who comes into the studio, first thing they do is they fling their arms around him, don't they? Makes you feel good on a Saturday morning, doesn't it?
Some people just have that charm.
Shall we just say thank you and goodbye?
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you and
Let's
goodbye.
enjoy.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Lovely to
There's
see
so
you
much
guys.
more coming up.
In real.
Good, lovely Petri. Don't come back.
Meanwhile, let's tell you about this wonderful great-grandmother in West Yorkshire who's been running a convenience store in a tiny hamlet, but she's been doing it for nearly half a century.
Oh, let's not say half a century, because it's been 1974 she started. It was when I was born.
Oh, half a century.
Nowhere near 50 years yet. May Stock's shop near Hebden Bridge has been supplying hikers in isolated villages since 74. Doors open at 7 in the morning till 9 in the evening, every day except for Christmas.
Anna Riley went along to speak to May to find out what's made her business such a staple, located in a place where apparently there are more sheep than people.
Nestled at the top of a valley above Hebden Bridge in a remote corner of Yorkshire lies May Stock's shop. The locals call it an Aladdin's cave, and inside it's packed with everything you'd need. The store has been run by the 81-year-old great-grandma since the 1970s, first set up as a refreshment stop for walkers along the nearby Pennine Way, one of Britain's most popular hiking routes.
Well, it's a lifeline for a lot of them, you know, because it's a long way. It's 240-odd miles from beginning to end, and a lot of it's worse than this. So if you can just do and get them on the way, and it makes them, give them a bit more encouragement to keep going.
even though the area is so remote, with the rise of Airbnb and the amount of walkers, there's never been a day when someone doesn't call in for something.
We have a favourite walk over here, and it's great because we don't have to carry our lunch. We can come and have a lovely sandwich or a pie and a lovely big
pot of tea.
Hot cup of tea. Yeah. That's what we like.
But it isn't just tourists who rely on May's shop. It's crucial to the small but spread out community and for isolated people in this remotest corner of the Calder Valley.
A lot of them are elderly and they won't have seen anybody for perhaps a week or something like that, because milkmen don't go now like they used to do they? And no, they come and we have a buffet and they just sit on the buffet and we make them a brew and and they change, you know, you can see when they're going out, the faces, they're happy. I've just done it so long, it's just part of life. And I've had a good life, so that's all that matters, isn't it? It's true Yorkshire grit, it just keeps us going, plodding on. Keep smiling.
So, despite May running the shop for half a century, she's certainly got no plans for retirement yet. Anna Riley, GB News, Calden.
We love May. I love the idea that, you know, keeping the shop going keeps her going.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. Start a shop.
Keep working. Actually, that's a really interesting thing. If you're listening and watching at the moment, do you believe in that? That a lot of people do, that keeping working keeps you going? And that, of course, people have always said when they retire, and we don't sort of retire like we used to, but if you do retire, suddenly your world changes and you maybe lose the will to even get out of bed in the morning.
Oh.
So is it your job that keeps you going? Love to hear from you. GBNews at gbnews.uk.
I can't wait till I retire.
When's it going to be? Years yet. That's the problem. That's the point.
Problem. It's
the option isn't there so much anymore.
No, I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, let's get a good dose of showbiz this morning. Stephanie Tecci is here. Morning.
Morning, guys.
Can we talk about Mr. Cruise?
Yeah, I think Tom Cruise is facing a bit of cruise control at the moment with his He's with his finances, because it's come out today in the papers that Hollywood bosses are worried that he's spending excessively on films that have not come out. So he was due to come out with Mission Impossible 7. Obviously, it was delayed due to the pandemic, and now it's been pushed to next July. He's got Top Gun 2. But the budget was around 50 million, and at the moment, his budget, he's pushed excessively, and he spent £300 million. Tom Cruise is, I don't know if...
But whose fault is that? What's he doing that's
he's
causing...
just pushing as we know, Tom Cruise is a perfectionist. So he's been using it on the shooting, and he's got his personal helicopter. Anywhere Tom Cruise goes in the world, he's flying on his helicopter. He's just currently in South Africa filming Mission Impossible 8. And Hollywood bosses are just saying, none of these films have come out, and you're just using all this money. And at the moment...
So he's filming 8 before 7's come out?
Yeah. Oh. And Top Gun 2. And, you know, as we know, cinema goers, people going to cinemas now has gone down. So I think bosses are quite worried how they're going to recuperate that £300 million.
And he's making the films, is he? He's presumably part of the production.
He's producing it, directing it and stuff. So I think he's just going a bit crazy at the moment with his finances.
He's going to write the theme tunes, sing the theme tune. Sorry.
I love that.
That's from the past. Mr. Gervais, Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, he's saying turning 60 is taking its toll on his body. Ricky Gervais is saying that he's suffering from a lot of ailments at the moment. And one thing that he says he's had to go, sorry if anyone's eating their breakfast at the moment, he says he stopped wearing pants.
Well, undergarments.
Yeah, undergarments, yeah.
Why is
because he's saying that it hurts his back putting them on. And he's now, as well, he said he's got a toe bra, which helps him get out of the bath as well. So
That's
it's a bit
really bad.
Yeah, so it's a bit too much information, but he says that growing old has not been kind to him.
Well, growing old isn't very nice, and there's no doubt you notice aches and pains that you think, oh, I'm turning into a little old lady. That's what I think. Just because getting up out of a chair, you go, oh. You're sitting down in a chair, you go, oh. And it's the back that goes, and then the knees, and But I think that's age. I mean, you can do lots of things to try and combat it. But, you know, Mr. Gervais, you know, if you're getting the aches and pains, but if he's actually got a thing on the bath to help him get himself out, that means he has got a very bad back.
But kudos to him for being open about it.
But he's open about these things, isn't he? And I'll be making a series about it next.
I find usually celebrities are the opposite. They want to hold on to youth and they'll do whatever, and they don't like the fact that they're getting older. So, I mean, it's quite refreshing to read that he's been so honest.
What about the very young celebrities, i.e. babies?
Oh, my gosh, right. We all on this panel have normal names. Stephen, Anne, Aidan, Stephanie. But these celebrities, they like to push the boat with their celebrity baby names. So Kylie Jenner from the Kardashian family, she's revealed that her son's name is Wolf Webster.
Wolf.
Yeah, and a lot of people online are like, why do you have to give your children such extravagant names? And that is just one of the many names. We've had Apple.
Howling with laughter.
Yeah.
Actually, there are quite a few wolves, though, in America. It is, you know, there's
Wolf Blitzer.
I was going to say there's a very well-known broadcaster called Wolf.
Okay.
Yeah. So I suppose it's fairly common. I was going to call my baby number one.
Yeah.
This is way back when you know, it was quite sort of edgy to do so. I was going to call him Blue. Seriously, I was.
Oh, I like
Blue Diamond. Oh.
He says to me now, thank God you didn't.
What did you go for in the end?
Oliver.
Oliver.
Okay.
I decided to go for an ordinary name.
My mother,
It's not ordinary.
my mother wanted me to be Nathan.
Nathan?
Or if I was a girl, Susan.
So, yeah, Nate.
No, Helen.
Nate or Helen.
Yeah.
Nate is nice, you see.
I don't like Nathan as a name.
What do you think of Blue Diamond?
Oh, that's got a ring to
What do I think of it?
That sounds priceless.
And men have been called Blue in the past. you know.
I quite like it.
Yeah, good, thank you. Anyway, I didn't in the end. I thought the poor child's got to grow up, go to school and things like that.
Well,
Can't be
these
easy.
celebrity babies get away with it, you know,
they
but
do.
us normal folk.
I always worry about little Apple.
Apple.
Who's Apple? Apple's
Gwyneth's daughter.
Gwyneth's daughter, yeah. I always think, how does she go to school called Apple?
Yeah.
It's a bit odd.
Maybe her friends just call her App.
Aidan.
Bad,
App.
Hey, App.
What have you got for us this morning, Aidan?
Well, just say,
Sports-wise,
I'll just say, though, Aidan's quite an adaptable
Aidan's nice,
name,
yeah.
because if you
Aid.
flip it round the other way, it's Nadia.
Oh.
Incredible.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, quite interesting, yeah. My mum wasn't thinking of that, mind-blowing. Yeah,
Do you get called Aid a lot?
Yeah, sounds like Christian, the executive producer, calls me Aid. Morning, Aid.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. It's fun.
Yeah.
I can live with that. Yeah, rather than Nadia,
nice
possibly.
name.
Sport-wise, yeah. Shall we talk cats?
Yes, please. Let's.
Yeah, I mean, look, David Moyes, the West Ham manager, yesterday. So this is Kurt Zouma. We saw the horrific footage earlier in the week, didn't we?
Yeah, video of him kicking his cat around the kitchen.
Kicking his cat, filmed by his brother, who's also been
both giggling while they did it. I mean, it actually was extraordinarily cruel and horrible.
It was indeed. And so West Ham played him on Wednesday against Watford. I think that was the right thing to do. He had to play some time. I think we do believe that there needs to be a degree of rehabilitation with the player. David Moyes said as well yesterday, as the players pleading for forgiveness, it was diabolical what he did. He's playing again tomorrow against Leicester at 4:30 kickoff. I think when I look back earlier in the week, I think West Ham probably wanted to, if we all agree that he's going to play the game again, it probably needs to happen early. It probably needs to happen in front of a home crowd. There was booing around the stadium, particularly from the Watford fans. I think it will be even worse tomorrow because obviously it's an away crowd. So he's been fined £250,000 as it is. That's going to be donated supposedly to animal welfare charities, although the RSPCA, we should say, have said they've not received anything just yet. His boot deal, Kurt Zouma's boot deal with Adidas has been suspended, or has been ended, rather.
Good.
West Ham have had 2 commercial deals with Experience Kissimmee, which is a holiday company in Florida, which has been standing for at least 5 years. That's ended. And also Vitality, they're the one with the little dog that goes along the perimeter of the pitch. They've decided to end their
the
agreement.
club, by not taking more of a punitive action against him, the club are now suffering.
Yeah.
They are.
Because of the sponsors
I think
pulling
they
out.
probably would have suffered anyway, though, Anne, wouldn't
Yeah,
they?
not if they'd taken a stand against him.
I don't know. I think it's.
I think they should have thrown the book at him. What do you
Do you
think?
think it's fair that the club suffers?
No, I don't actually know. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that, why should the manager, why should the club, why should the fans
I just
suffer?
think, do you
They
know what? I
need the
just think
player.
there's a lack of understanding because, I mean, my father, who doesn't follow football at all, rang me up and said, I hope you're going to sign this petition. Because it's such a disgrace. I mean, he's a big animal lover, but I mean, it's...
Can you say the 267,000?
It's on
in a matter of days,
Yeah. So, look, I mean, I think It depends whether you believe in rehabilitation or not. How
How
far do you go?
There's got to be a moment, a period of time.
Yes.
This is too soon, I think.
You don't think you should be playing?
No, not yet.
And
no.
I think mentally, where his head must be at the moment, I haven't watched him play, but
Yeah,
I'm
he
sure
played all right.
Okay, he did okay, because I thought maybe.
I think the club should suspend him and say we will review it again after so many months. He should be made to suffer, not the club.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But the club has to
But the
take
club,
a
if
stand.
he doesn't play, the club suffers.
Yeah.
Because he's a good player. And also, anyone who thinks they were going to just cancel his contract when,
I know. Well, that's money.
it cost £30 million last summer, you know, it's just not going to happen.
A man who can be that cruel to an animal makes me worried.
Yes, oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, also just how, you know, it was just filming it as well. It was just perverse almost, wasn't it?
Very perverse.
Yeah.
It just seems like these footballers at the moment, their behaviours, like they don't understand that they're supposed to be role models,
Yes.
and they just think they can.
It's not an
get
ordinary
away
job,
with
is it, Stephanie?
Huh?
It's not an ordinary job,
No,
is it?
it's not. It's not. And time again, we just hear about these footballers just doing crazy things, and I'm like, they should learn from the lessons or mistakes of one footballer, but. Hey.
They're young at the end of the day. They're very young.
And
no
well
excuse for that. It's no excuse for what he did. That was that was viscerally wrong, and he should have known it was wrong. He shouldn't have even had the willingness to do it, but let alone, as you say, to film it and then enjoy it because they were.
Somebody within that WhatsApp community that he was involved in must have taken offence.
Oh yeah, leaks it.
Because they leaked it. I mean, you don't do that. You don't take that decision lightly, do you?
Yeah.
Well, good on them for doing so.
Indeed.
Frankly. Look, we've got to leave it there. Aidan, Stephanie, thank you both very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Amazing. Stay with us because we've got plenty more to come, including a cybersecurity expert who will tell us how you can avoid getting scammed, like what I was, within.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. A very different start to the day compared to yesterday. Yesterday was frosty but bright in many places. Today it's frost-free but windy and, in some locations, wet. Spells of rain are expected through the weekend. These weather fronts across the UK, stretching all the way back to the mid-Atlantic, they're going to continue to pile in throughout today and tomorrow. So, well, increasingly damp really across northern and western parts of England as well as Wales. The rain turning heavier and more persistent across Wales and northwest England into the afternoon. Drier and brighter ahead of that for East Anglia, the southeast, parts of the East Midlands, central southern England, but increasingly breezy and cloudy. Sunny spells coming through for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Blustery showers here. 10 Celsius for Belfast, 8 for Manchester, 8 for London. Similar to yesterday, but not feeling very pleasant because of the wind and the rain. Coastal gales around Irish Sea coast, and then the rain eventually sinks into southern England during the evening. Easing off for a time before further spells of heavy rain push back into Wales and the southwest by dawn tomorrow. Drier to the north with some clear spells for Scotland, also a few showers, and frost-free tomorrow morning once again. But it soon goes downhill. Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, much of England and Wales sees wet and windy weather returning. Coastal gales for the south coast, heavy and persistent rain, particularly over parts of Wales, and the rain for the higher parts of Wales really mounting up through Saturday and Sunday. 60 and in some places 100 millimetres of rain could cause disruption. But it's looking damp everywhere, but it is milder, 10 or 11 Celsius in the south, colder for Scotland, 8 Celsius at best here. Brighter skies for the north of Scotland, just a few showers. And that bright, showery weather in the north of Scotland tends to become more widespread on Monday and into Tuesday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning, it's 9 o'clock on February the 12th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK on your TV, your radio and online. So wherever you are, you can take us with you. Coming up this morning, Joe Biden speaks to Russian President Vladimir Putin today in a last-ditch effort to avert war in Ukraine after a week of failed diplomatic efforts by European nations. So is Boris Johnson prepared for the worst?
Also coming up in the programme, are you a victim of online fraud or cybercrime? Well, a tech expert will tell us how to better protect ourselves from the scammers.
And we'll go to Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire to speak to a great-grandmother who's been running a village shop for almost half a century, only taking time off on Christmas Day.
We love to hear from you here on GB News, and so do get in touch. The best part of our show is when we go through all of your views and show some of your pictures. You can get in touch on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or send us a tweet @GBNews.
Earlier on, we were shouting out to you, saying, where are you watching us from? Because we have a little gizmo now that tells us not who's watching, because obviously we don't know who you are until you tell us, but where you're watching from. And it's fascinating for us just to see where the programme is going out to.
Yeah, sort of the areas that are sort of tuning in the most, if you like. I don't know that France counts from that, but Barbara is in France this morning, and that's us in a... Oh, I like your walls. So it looks like you're in a sort of farmhouse.
Oh, I love that room. See, I love to see people's rooms.
Well, this is it. It's so nice to see where you are and what you're doing.
It's a nice bit of stonework, that, isn't it? Is that your kitchen? I like that.
You've got a lovely house.
Yeah. Very rural French,
nice.
Yes. And William is watching us from Woburn. Oh, look!
Oh, that's very nice. I wonder whereabouts in Woburn you are. I live not far from Woburn, and I'm always popping out of Woburn
I love your nice wood
drink
floors.
or a walk.
And the window, I love the window.
Beautiful views.
Oh, I love to see people's houses. We're nosy, aren't we?
One place I've always wanted to go and never been is Bali. Nick is there.
Hi. Do you get that? Bali. Hi. Bali hi? No?
No.
I'm speaking to the wrong generation.
Great to have a pleasant and balanced morning show again, which incidentally I watch at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He's also losing his car keys.
Yes, I was complaining I've lost my car keys. And for everybody listening on the radio, there are these lovely pictures from all over, and there we are, the two of us sat together on big screens in most people's living rooms.
It's
Isn't that nice?
Lovely. Nikki says, good morning, Anne and Stephen, from a very sunny Brittany.
And there's very nice. There she is in her bathrobe, watching us.
You see, and it's nice to see who you are. Morning to you.
Good morning.
That's a great
Brilliant.
shot.
And Helen Goodland says, this is when I met you 3 years ago on February the 1st on Thornbury High Street, reporting on the unexpected snow. I remember you standing on that corner.
Yeah. Oh,
isn't that lovely?
Oh, that's really nice. That's where I was working for someone else.
Yeah, that's right. But I remember you doing that report, and you were standing on a corner, and all these lorries were going past, throwing up snow at you. I remember that.
Well, 3 years later, and here I am watching you on TV at home in Thornbury.
I love that.
Have you got that
and
picture?
then Mandy says, I'm on a weekend away in Torquay. My hubby Cliff is playing bowls this weekend, 9 a.m. start today. But I'm relaxing in bed watching GB News. That's brilliant, thank you.
Very nice. Do you know, it's just so lovely to see you, and so lovely to see where you are and what you're doing and who you are. And I have to say, Helen, I remember you very well. It was one of those funny little things when you stood outside in the middle of the street, sort of on your Todd at 5 in the morning, then all of a sudden there was a sort of queue of people who wanted pictures, and it was so lovely.
Yeah,
so lovely. I tell you what we should do, and it's not always that easy to organise, but we should try at some point, is to go and do this show out and about somewhere.
Can we wait till the weather's nice?
Wait till the weather's
Because I don't
nice,
fancy standing on a street corner in the snow at 5 in the morning.
But when it's a bit warmer, and get ourselves off to Nottingham or Derby or wherever it might be, Hull, I don't know, wherever you want us to
It
come.
would be fun to do it, wouldn't it?
It would be really nice.
And then you could come and meet us properly.
Just come and say hello and join in the show properly. Get your views as well.
Good morning, Anne and Stephen. We were so pleased to hear East Sussex added to your map today by a couple from Seaford. We are also avid viewers of your programme. You're a great team. You even make bad news bearable. Love from Pat and Tony in Bexhill-on-Sea.
Oh,
Yeah,
lovely. Morning to Anne, Stephen and the rest of the team. I'm loving your show and never miss a weekend. You're what weekends have been lacking for a long time. I'm watching from East Kilbride in Glasgow, though you didn't give us your name. I haven't got your name here, but morning to you.
Yeah, I used to have family living in East Kilbride. Dee says, I'm watching you both from Thailand. At last able to visit my family. I'm currently in a hotel overnight as part of the quarantine entry, awaiting the day 5 PCR test. Everything operates so smoothly, so well organised here. Day 1 was fine, so keep your fingers crossed for this one, please. We cross our fingers for you. Love the show, and I made sure I packed my tablet so I could watch you in the hotel.
Oh, jolly good. Michael is in beautiful Harrogate. Oh, I love Harrogate. He says, good morning, Stephen and Anne. This is the first time I've done anything like this. Well, it's really good that you have, Michael. But I just want to say I'm absolutely loving the show. It's a total breath of fresh air.
Yeah, Harrogate's lovely because they do the book fair, very famous book fair up in Harrogate, don't they? Yeah, I've been up there many times.
I like to pop into Betty's.
That's right, it's famous, isn't it?
Oh, Betty's for
Betty's
tea
buns.
Tea and a cake.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jim says, hi, I listen every morning from Worcester in North Cornwall. Great show, guys. The news is as I like it, easy to understand. Thank you very much, Jim.
Yeah, and you know, what is nice is that we can do things a little bit differently, like spend a lot of time going through your thoughts and your views and your pictures. That's what we're all about. It's all about you, not just about what the news is, but about what you're up to as well. And that's a really important part of our job.
I love the idea as well that when you're abroad somewhere, or if you live abroad, you seem to be rather liking us as your foot still in the home country, if you see what I mean. Yeah. It's rather nice that you keep in touch with us. Thank you.
It is. Now, let's run you through the main news this morning. And another senior Tory MP seems to be putting pressure on Boris Johnson to resign if the Metropolitan Police conclude that he broke COVID regulations.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith said the Prime Minister would find it very tough to hold on to his post if he is issued with a fine.
But it comes after Downing Street confirmed Mr Johnson had a legal questionnaire as part of the Metropolitan Police inquiry into lockdown parties.
Well, joining us now is Paul Connew, who's former editor of the Sunday Mirror. Hello again, hi.
Good morning.
Hello, Paul. It's interesting, isn't it? Because how do you read it? If the Metropolitan Police see that Boris deserves a fine, that surely means he's broken the law. And as we heard John Major sort of confirm the other day, if a Prime Minister breaks the law, he has to resign. Is that how you see it too?
Morally, yes, but all the signs are that Boris Johnson will resist quitting, even if he is fined. But of course, on top of that, probably more serious than any fine he gets is the clear evidence that this would give that he actually had misled Parliament, which convention dictates is, a resigning offence. But what's worrying, especially for those of us who never thought Boris Johnson was fit to be Prime Minister in the first place, is that there are signs, even including the current Attorney General, that that the pro-Johnson elements on the Tory benches don't believe that a criminal fine for breaking his own lockdown laws, or indeed misleading Parliament, is essential to his resignation, and that he could resist that. I find that quite extraordinary, but I don't think Boris Johnson is going to go without a fight. And as the Sunday Times quoted him as saying to one of his aides the last weekend, it'll take a panzer division to get me out of number 10.
But I mean, there's an interesting loophole, isn't there? If he's found to have broken the ministerial code, well, the Prime Minister enforces the ministerial code, but doesn't necessarily fall under it. That's right, isn't it?
That's precisely right. And also, there's another factor here. I gather that one line of defence is going to be that number 10 is both his home and his workplace, and therefore he's in a special or even a unique position. I don't think that's going to play well in the court of public opinion and among the more, should I say, the more principled Tory MPs, because, you know, all of us were in a position where our homes became our workplace during the lockdown, and we weren't able to throw parties and have more than our immediate family or colleagues there, and it's becoming a psychodrama, this one, and one wonders how much this is distracting Boris Johnson from his Winston Churchill act on the Ukraine issue. And it's interesting to me.
Forgive me, Paul.
It's interesting to me that vocal voices.
Sorry, Paul. It's just the delay on this line, but is it getting slightly ridiculous now when it was a big headline splash the other day, you know, Boris Johnson pictured somewhere vaguely near a bottle of wine and a bag of crisps, and that's meant to be scandalous. I mean, there are elements of this that now just do seem a bit like a witch hunt.
Well, witch hunt, of course, is a word Boris has started to use. Of course, Donald Trump, used it almost on a daily basis. No, it's not, because it's the build-up of cases, of parties or gatherings which look like a party, and if they look like a party, they probably are a party. And I don't think that picture on its own is interesting, but it's only part of a pattern. And Boris Johnson is in charge of number 10. The idea, the preposterous excuses he's given in Parliament that, that first of all there were no parties, then if there were parties he was outraged, and then he didn't quite understand whether an event was a party or not, which is beyond satire. If the man who had us all in lockdown, who stood in front of those cameras at those number 10 press conferences telling us how we must behave, was actually breaking those laws, I think he is in a not just badly damaged, but he is in a terminal position. And I think that if the police report and the unredacted Sue Gray report are as damning as it would seem to be, I don't see any way that he can survive, and without damaging the Tory brand so much. And I think even if he survived through to the May local elections, if they, and that's a big if in itself, but if they turn out as badly as the polls suggest, I think that would be the final breaking point, for his premiership.
On the other hand, and I think there are lots of people of the opinion that he is unique because he is the Prime Minister. It's a big job. He has to be surrounded by aides. He has to work, goodness knows how many hours a day, and so do all the people around him. Just to pause for a few minutes and have a drink from a bottle of wine or champagne, and to just congratulate your team for doing a great job, for working long hours. Surely that's not a party. And anyway, his position is unique. Aren't we a bit petty to pick him to bits over expecting him to be ordinary and normal when clearly he is not, and neither is his position?
I think this one has really cut through, and that's what's worrying many Tory MPs, that Boris Johnson, this sort of cavalier, sort of eccentric, Teflon-coated figure, I think the Teflon coat's fallen apart now, and I don't think that the charisma factor is working anymore. And I think that if the police report and the Sue Gray report live up to expectations, then I think he can't survive. I think, if you like, the so-called Boris magic has gone. And he hasn't got that many friends in the Tory party in terms of close allies beyond what he can do for them. But once the sort of the winner with a difference is perceived to have feet of clay or be a hypocrite and a liar, imposing on the public rules that he was not prepared to actually obey and respect himself, I think the magic certainly has gone.
It's quite interesting, though, isn't it, in terms of, I mean, in a way, the main avenue to get rid of the Prime Minister will be these letters of no confidence handed into the 1922 committee in Sir Graham Brady. Well, this has been going on for weeks now. We were told weeks and weeks ago, well, they're very near the 54 number. Well, clearly they're not, because that would have triggered a challenge to his leadership. Now, clearly that they haven't reached that point. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't particularly, because I think there are those who are holding back because they want to see the outcome of the police investigation, which was an extraordinarily belated intervention by the police when they should have been in there much, much earlier. But I think that's just one of the many factors in the departure of the unlamented Cressida Dick. But I think there are those MPs who want to wait for the police outcome, want to see the unredacted Sue Gray report. Some even want to wait to see the May election impact. So, and also, I think at the moment too, I think there are those MPs who think, I want him to go, but putting in my letter in the middle of the Ukraine crisis is not the most opportune moment to put it in. So I think there are several factors, and of course MPs that currently are on the half-term break, so there's no difficult PMQs coming up for him on Wednesday. So he's got a bit of a breathing space, and obviously he will play the Ukraine crisis for all it's worth. Now, it is a very serious crisis, but I think we have to be very, very wary that Putin isn't playing a game of geopolitical poker. He's in trouble, Putin. His popularity on his domestic programs are very unpopular, but the Russian people are very proud, and they like the idea of him standing up to the West. So in a sense, he is now back centre stage, people dancing to an extent to his tune. And of course, there are divisions within EU nations and even within the ranks of the NATO members. So Putin at the moment is, if you like, calling the shots. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens today when he speaks to both Joe Biden, and to Macron, not to Boris Johnson today, it would appear, but we don't quite know. But Putin himself has got a problem now, because he has to decide in the next couple of weeks, because of the weather conditions, whether to invade or not invade, or whether to just carry on creating, if you like, a sort of mini return to the Cold War and just keeping the pressure up without actually doing anything. And he may be calculating, rightly or wrongly, that the ranks, among the NATO members, and especially among the EU nations that rely heavily, on Russian gas, whether solidarity remains on that. Already Hungary are showing signs, because they're very reliant on Russian gas, that they're not in favour of sanctions. Germany, of course, heavily reliant, the new chancellor there. Are they going to really sort of back not opening the new pipeline, gas pipeline? It's a game of bluff going on here. Boris Johnson and President Biden, both who have big domestic problems, are the most vocal in terms of rhetoric, less so the Germans and the French. It's hard to call this one. It's tense, it's dangerous. Invasion and war could actually happen, but Putin may just be thinking, I've got them dancing to my tune, and it's playing well at home. It wouldn't play as well, of course, if the body bags started coming back to Russian families in the same way that Afghanistan turned sour for the Russians. But it's hard to call. I wouldn't want to put my money on, if I was a gambling man, on whether an invasion goes ahead or whether it's cyber warfare, maybe a bit more of incursion into eastern Ukraine, the areas that are sympathetic to Russia, rather than anything resembling a full-scale invasion. But I could easily be wrong.
Yeah, we shall see. Look, Paul Connew, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, great to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's bring you up to date with what's going on in the news. As you know now, the Foreign Office is urging British nationals to leave Ukraine immediately, whilst commercial means are still available. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace warns Russia could invade at any time after amassing an estimated 130,000 troops on the border.
Well, President Biden will speak to his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin today. It comes as the United States prepares to evacuate its embassy in Kiev.
The Taliban have released a British journalist they'd been holding for several days in Afghanistan. Andrew North was on assignment for the United Nations Refugee Agency, reporting on the country's humanitarian crisis.
And experts from SAGE are warning that lifting all COVID restrictions will have a disproportionate impact on medically vulnerable people. It follows the Prime Minister's announcement that restrictions will end soon, including the need to self-isolate following a positive test.
So at 21 minutes past 9, do stay with us because we've got plenty more to come, including a tech expert to teach us, particularly me, how not to get scammed. Here's the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern. A very different start to the day compared to yesterday. Yesterday was frosty but bright in many places. Today it's frost-free but windy and, in some locations, wet. Spells of rain are expected through the weekend. These weather fronts across the UK stretching all the way back to the mid-Atlantic. They're going to continue to pile in throughout today and tomorrow. So, well, increasingly damp really across northern and western parts of England as well as Wales. The rain turning heavier and more persistent across Wales and northwest England into the afternoon. Drier and brighter ahead of that for East Anglia, the southeast, parts of the East Midlands, central southern England, but increasingly breezy and cloudy. Sunny spells coming through for Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery showers here. 10 Celsius for Belfast, 8 for Manchester, 8 for London. Similar to yesterday, but not feeling very pleasant because of the wind and the rain. Coastal gales around Irish Sea coasts, and then the rain eventually sinks into southern England during the evening. Easing off for a time before further spells of heavy rain push back into Wales and the southwest by dawn tomorrow. Drier to the north with some clear spells for Scotland, also a few showers, and frost-free tomorrow morning once again. But it soon goes downhill. Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, much of England and Wales sees wet and windy weather returning. Coastal gales for the south coast, heavy and persistent rain, particularly over parts of Wales, and the rain for the higher parts of Wales really mounting up through Saturday and Sunday. 60 and in some places 100 millimetres of rain could cause disruption. But it's looking damp everywhere, but it is milder, 10 or 11 Celsius in the south, colder for Scotland, 8 Celsius at best here. Brighter skies for the north of Scotland, just a few showers. And that bright, showery weather in the north of Scotland tends to become more widespread on Monday and into Tuesday.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is 9:25. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne live across the UK on your TV and on your radio.
Now, a great-grandmother in West Yorkshire has been running a convenience store in a tiny hamlet for nearly half a century. Maystock's shop near Hebden Bridge has been supplying hikers and isolated villagers with goods since 1974, and she opens her doors from 7 in the morning to 9 in the evening every day. She does give herself Christmas Day off, though.
Oh, thank heavens. Anna Riley went along to speak to May to find out what's made her business so important in a place where there's more sheep than people.
Nestled at the top of a valley above Hebden Bridge in a remote corner of Yorkshire lies Maystock's shop. The locals call it an Aladdin's cave, and inside it's packed with everything you'd need. The store has been run by the 81-year-old great-grandma since the 1970s, first set up as a refreshment stop for walkers along the nearby Pennine Way, one of Britain's most popular hiking routes.
Well, it's a lifeline for a lot of them, you know, because it's a long way. It's 240 odd miles from beginning to end, and a lot of it's worse than this. So if you can just do and get them on the way, and it makes them, give them a bit more encouragement to keep going.
Even though the area is so remote, with the rise of Airbnb and the amount of walkers, there's never been a day when someone doesn't call in for something.
We have a favourite walk over here, and it's great because we don't have to carry our lunch. We can come and have a lovely sandwich or a pie and a lovely big
pot of tea.
Hot cup of tea. Yeah. That's what we like.
But it isn't just tourists who rely on May's shop. It's crucial to the small but spread out community and for isolated people in this remotest corner of the Calder Valley.
A lot of them are elderly, and they won't have seen anybody for perhaps a week or something like that, because milkmen don't go now like they used to do they? And no, they come and we have a buffet, and they just sit on the buffet and we make them a brew, and and they change, you know. You can see when they're going out, the faces, they're happy. I've just done it so long, it's just part of life. And I've had a good life, so that's all that matters, isn't it? It's true Yorkshire grit, it just keeps us going, plodding on. Keep smiling.
So, despite May running the shop for half a century, she's certainly got no plans for retirement yet. Anna Riley, GB News, Calden.
Brilliant. Brilliantly done. Well done, May.
Love it. I love that part of the world as well. Gorgeous. And
It is,
on a
isn't
day
it?
like when it's, well, the day when she was filming that, when it's a bit grim and grey,
Yeah.
but it's nice to get in the houses there and get the fire lit and have a bag of crisps that you bought at May's shop.
Can I just say that we were talking earlier about Boris being at the so-called Partygate and everything. And I was putting it to our interviewee there that, maybe him just sort of being near a bottle of Plonk and, their packet of crisps. And it didn't look much like a party to me, actually. And maybe it is just a boss congratulating his staff at the end of a long day. I don't know. Actually, Andrew from Oldham has said, if people think that the picture of Boris at that Zoom quiz was a party, then I'd hate to be at their parties. As far as I'm concerned, that picture is just like the Starmer picture. That's what I can't help thinking.
Yeah, when that came out this week, I did think, well, what's the... I mean, I do think there are questions to be answered.
Yes.
But with that particular one, this great scoop that he's pictured... He said in the papers, but he's pictured close to a bottle of wine.
I know.
Well...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe... surely the Prime Minister's position is pretty unique. It's like saying that the Queen... It's a bit like arguing the Queen should go out and do her own shop every weekend, at Tesco's. She is a bit different than that. And surely, if you are Prime Minister, you've got so much work to do, you can't avoid just going in and congratulating your team. Yeah. I don't know.
Susie says, morning Susie, I don't get what the Prime Minister has done wrong. Number 10 is his home and workplace. I work for a big American IT company, and throughout work at home, we've had weekly social Zoom calls where at times we've been encouraged to drink alcohol, even in the morning, and to join in, as it's viewed as good for team building and helps people relax and bond. Going out in a work garden to socialise, I just don't get what's illegal about that.
It's an interesting one. David says, I'm sick and tired of hearing about Partygate and the mindless individuals who are obsessed with it. There are far more important issues in the world today that need addressing. I guess there's nothing more important than the honesty of your own Prime Minister, but it is sort of feeling ridiculous now, isn't it?
I think some of it is getting a bit
my
desperate.
goodness, he was pictured next to a bottle of champagne. It's not as if he was quaffing it with a garland around his own neck.
No, it's surrounded by a group of 20 people. No, I don't know.
Tell you what, one other thing. I always love looking at the birthdays, whose birthday it is today. And it is Dame Norma Major's birthday today.
Oh, is it?
Obviously, the wife of former Prime Minister Sir John. How old do you think she is today? I find this quite stunning.
I don't know.
80.
Is she?
Yeah. And
Isn't that funny?
He did that speech earlier in the week and was on television doing quite a lot of interviews and everything. He's 78. She's 80 today. I find that astonishing.
I had no idea they were that sort of age, actually. I just sort of think of them, I suppose it must have been in their 50s when he was PM or something.
You know when you're getting old, when Prime Ministers get younger, I suppose.
And policemen and doctors.
Policemen, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way. Well, happy birthday, Norma.
Happy birthday, Dame Norma. Yeah,
Dame Norma,
indeed.
Now, from the older generation to the younger one, a new study has found that GCSE grades of children from poorer backgrounds, compared with more affluent peers, has not improved for more than a decade. The finding is described as deeply concerning, highlighting more than 10 years of underfunding and neglect by the government.
Well, here to tell us more is Head of Guide Education and a former head teacher, Leon Hady. Hello there, welcome, Leon.
Very good afternoon to you. Good morning.
Is it afternoon already? No, it's morning. Did you say good afternoon?
I'm so sorry. I'm abroad, so it's afternoon.
Oh, I see. Oh, that explains
I'm trying to
it.
get both things. Excuse me.
All right, thank you very much for that. No, it's morning still here. But, I mean, this report, while it's worrying and a bit depressing, it's not terribly surprising, is it? Or are you surprised by it?
No, we focus generally on certain areas, certain places, and normally it's the centre of places that we want to perform better and work well with. So a lot of money, a lot of effort is directed at some highlight spots, but generally we don't find it across an area. We don't find it across suburbs. We don't find it especially within coastal regions. A lot of them suffer greatly.
So, I mean, it begs the question, if this problem is still here and saying, well, nothing much has improved in 10... Oh, get your phone.
It's not a meowing cat, it's a telephone.
It's always something. But if this problem is still about, how do we even begin to tackle it?
It has to be multifaceted, because when you're thinking about how you reach students, you have to remember that some students' schools aren't the kind of schools that we would wish for or send our own kids to if we had an ideal world. So we have to actually try and get community educators more involved, and especially parents. When you think about how little parents know about educating, especially when they're going to send their children to schools for 11 years, from 5 to 16, the parents need a lot more help and support in actually knowing what to expect, what to do. From working in different aspects and angles, we always find that parents kind of have their own limitations of what they had in school and force them on their kids sometimes. Think, well, I wasn't good, so my child won't be. And generally, the ambition of the parent can make a big difference as well, not only in picking or demanding a lot from school, but in helping their child themselves. So it's multifaceted. I think the most important thing with school themselves is actually to change the nature of the recruits we get into schools as well. That's a big, big thing.
But if a child has no support at home, and that could be for various reasons, as you say, that could be just poverty, it could be negligence as well. How can a school make up for that? How can we as a society make up for a dismal background?
Well, that's one of the areas. The community educators, obviously bringing back the idea of where people used to go to library, youth clubs, community centres to get that extra help. Schools have been running extra help for schools for a long time, but with the pressure on grades, it makes schools prioritise things that are going to pass exams rather than the confidence maybe to enjoy school. Because remember, there's two aspects to school. There is passing exams and grades, which has some benefit and use. But more importantly, we have to make students want to come to school, enjoy school. If you come to school every day and you tell a student that they're failing, they're no good, it becomes very, very psychologically damaging. I know 5-year-olds who have been put in remedial handwriting classes at 5. You know, some schools aren't even sending their kids to school at 5. So it tells you a lot about the way the exam system is actually shaping all of people's attitudes towards what education is in this country. And really, I've always said, a lot of people concur, it's the tail wagging the dog. And education does not does not equate to the qualifications you have. They're two very different things, and I think we need to start looking at that very.
But look, Leon, just very briefly, I mean, a lot of the problem with these sort of studies is that then people living in a poorer area of the country can often say, well, clearly the teachers at my local school are not necessarily very good, and that just isn't the case, is it? You can have great teachers in some of those more deprived areas' schools.
Well, this is one of the areas where I hope technology is really going to suit us. You saw, obviously, we work with over 1,000 schools, Oak National Academy, BBC Bite Size, Khan Academy. There's so much options out there. So the direct teacher that you have won't, hopefully in the future, will make less and less of a difference if we explain to parents and to the wider community what all the access points are. Where can you access this information? How can it help you? How can you support you? The teachers are absolutely imperative. If we have time, I'd tell you a study that's mind-blowing to how important a teacher is. But right now, what we need to get everyone is the information, the broadband access, the laptops, and in a silver lining to a horrible cloud, the pandemic actually provided that. A lot of people got Kindles, a lot of never would have got them before. A lot of people got laptops they never would get before. So the problem is primarily an access one. Access to the information and access to a good teacher, and everything that stems afterwards, everything that follows from that will follow.
OK. Look, Leon, Heidi, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon to you.
Yes. Plenty of people abroad at the minute.
Yeah, lots of people. Stay with us, because there's plenty more to come after a very short break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is 7:39. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne from a TV studio. I said we need to get out and about at some point in the spring or summer. Luke Nash, morning Luke, says, come to Market Bosworth. Now, there's a beautiful little town.
Is that Leicestershire?
Leicestershire, Warwickshire.
Yeah, lovely. Oh, yeah, like Warwickshire.
Gorgeous, yes, we'll do Market Bosworth.
OK. There's been angry backlash, by the way, over the... Sorry, when I said OK, I thought, OK.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We'll do that. We'll
It's
do
all
that,
right. Yes,
Stephen.
Mum.
Yeah, OK, good. Moving on. It's nearly 9:40. There's been an angry backlash over the delay in lifting COVID restrictions in Northern Ireland because of the collapse of the government at Stormont. The Health Minister, Robin Swan, says he is still waiting for legal advice about removing the remaining COVID restrictions. For the latest, let's speak to Doogie Beattie, who's there. Hello there, Doogie. Oh, yeah, still out mastering the cold there. It looks a bit chilly. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of people will be looking from the outside into Northern Ireland saying, what the heck is going on there? Why can't the government move on this?
Well, even the people in Northern Ireland are saying what's going on here. The government collapsed, well, the executive collapsed here about a week ago. Behind me, this beautiful Portastone building is the building that everybody will think is Northern Ireland's government, and it's where the MLAs, the MPs, if you like, are elected to. And because it's a forced coalition government, depending on what your electoral mandate is here, in other words, the more MLAs you get in here, the more ministerial positions you get in the executive, basically the cabinet that sits in the castle just down the road here. Now, that executive has to agree on most things that come across its table, and on things that are urgent or very, very legally set, if you like, they have to be put through the Northern Ireland Executive, and they have to be agreed by all. Now, last week, the week before last, the Agriculture Minister, Edwin Poots, didn't like the protocol and the checks in the Irish Sea, so he stopped those checks by himself. That then caused the Executive to say that they were challenging that in court. Paul Givan, the First Minister, the DUP First Minister, then resigned, which then effectively brought down the executive. In other words, no cabinet, which then left the government behind us, the MLAs on the floor, only able to pass legislation that had already gone through committee stages and through the executive. And as I've said, it basically put it into a zombie government. So the Health Minister now is trying to, he will have to singularly do exactly what Edwin Poots did, to stop those COVID regulations. The irony of this is that the DUP that collapsed the government were the party that was against so many strict regulations being put on businesses. And they have said, well, it's OK, go ahead, do what you want and stop these COVID regulations. So there's a lot of electioneering going on here because, of course, because the executive has collapsed, the government will be due to go into election. We have parties like the SDLP, Nicola Mallon appearing in front of cameras giving off about this, but they were the party that wanted the COVID passports that cost £10 million to run over 5 weeks. We have had problems with the Republic of Ireland running their restrictions and us running different restrictions. It has been a real mess, to be honest. I don't think there's anybody that can say anything different about it. In fact, the politicians have said that themselves. So at some point in this next week, the government will have to decide by itself, or the Justice Minister can go ahead and say, I'm not prosecuting anybody for breaking COVID regulations.
We'll watch it very closely. Doogie, thank you.
It's an extraordinary situation how a government can just be sort of paralysed just because of, I don't know, laws, I suppose. Now, something we've been talking about all morning, because I was very embarrassed to tell you right from the beginning of the programme that yesterday I was scammed. My mobile phone went ping at 5:13 yesterday morning with this message. And it says, text message, today 0513, NHS, You've came into contact with someone who has tested positive. Please order a test kit. And then there's a link. And I'm afraid I clicked on the link. And I got through to a very credible NHS webpage, and I filled in the form with my name, my address, my gender, my date of birth, and my credit card details. I can't believe I did it, but I was absolutely convinced and panicked a bit because it was about COVID and whether or not I'd be, have to isolate or something. And so I filled in the form. And apparently, I was saying this right from 6 o'clock this morning, a lot of people have had that message. And most people have been wise enough to actually realise it was a scam, but I didn't.
Do you know what? It's easily done, though. This is the problem. They're clever. Lots of you have fallen prey to the scammers, as Anne was saying. So let's talk to journalist and technology expert Will Guyot, who joins us now. Really good to see you, Will. We know all this sort of thing is horribly common. How do we go about protecting ourselves?
Let's just start with saying to Anne, there's no shame at all. I actually got caught by something this week, and I spend most of my life talking about this. If you're busy, if it hits you at the wrong time, or if it looks convincing enough, people get into these situations. So there's no shame at all. The best thing to be is always you have to have an air of suspicion now. That's the most unfortunate thing about unsolicited messages that you weren't expecting. There's always an outside chance that it could be somebody pretending to do something. Just a couple of years ago, I got something which looked almost identical to the type of communication I got from my bank. The only thing I noticed on it was it opened with "Hello, dear." I don't think my bank knows me that well or would give me that much love. So you have to have a little lens of suspicion on anything that comes in. I know that a lot of the Omicron and COVID texts that are going to people have got spelling mistakes in them. That's fine if you're an English graduate like me, but it can be a challenge for other people. More and more of these scams are happening, not because people are directly targeting individuals. They are literally sending millions of these out a day, and they're looking for the unfortunate people who click on these links and get taken through and then get involved in these situations.
If you look at my message, what should I have been able to tell straight away? I mean, because my son lectured me on this. What you don't see, we're just showing it again for those who are listening on radio, we're just showing the same text message again. What you don't see is that there was a phone number at the top of where it had come from, which was very obviously now a mobile phone number. So given that, what sort of things should I have immediately seen and thought, hey, hang on a minute, that looks suspicious?
For the COVID testing one, that would have had there would have been NHS somewhere in the address, because all of our COVID testing is being handled by the NHS, or gov.uk. Those would have been two things I would have looked at for there. But like you, if it had happened to me at 5:15 in the morning and I was thinking, oh Lord, I'm going to have to tell work I can't come in this weekend, etc., 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 you might click on that and go through the process. What you should do, though, if you have gone through this process and you have used a credit card, I would probably contact the credit card company, ask them to cancel that particular card. Some banks and organisations, if you have something like this happen, can put credit checking service on your account, so you get alerts and warnings if somebody does a credit search or tries to use any of your personal information. What happens here, a lot of this is long game theory. So hackers might be able to get a bit of information about you now. They might keep it on a database and they might come back to it later on. The fact that our mobile phone numbers are currently so freely in circulation depends on who you believe. But some people suggest that lists have been illegally sold from marketing companies and mobile companies and all sorts of things over the years. And that's the problem. Our personal data is now valuable to people, and it's valuable to these scammers who might want to be in a situation where they can extract some money from you. It's like the Nigerian prince email that we had a number of years ago. People got sent them, and lots of us would sit there and go, oh, that's ridiculous. You've fallen thinking somebody's going to send you £1 million. But some people fell for them, which is why they kept sending them.
I mean, look, it's part of the problem here in terms of how we understand it, that things are different. Now, in Anne's case, they wanted credit card details, so they can either try and get your money, or perhaps they just want information so they can clone you, or perhaps they just want you to click on a link because it's infected. It's all sorts of different threats, isn't it?
That is the challenge. It's not easy to come on and say exactly what the intent of this particular one was. I have a tendency of using, even though, like I said, I pretty much got caught with something in the last few days myself, I tend to use the footage, the the adage from my dad that there's no such thing as a free lunch, and if it's too good to be true, don't click on it. So I always have this element of suspicion when it comes to the things that I send. But the challenge, as we've seen with that message there weren't any spelling mistakes in it. There was only things that me as a tech expert might spot and think smelt a bit fishy. We just have to constantly be on our toes in these situations. It's not about changing passwords. It's not about keeping devices up to date. It's just about having that moment before you click on the link and thinking to yourself, is there a reason why I've been sent this? Should I be sent this unsolicited message? For example, if I ever see anything which claims to be from my bank, I'll just call my bank and ask if they've got a problem with my account or something. That is how I try to live my life as well as I can at the moment.
Yeah, we have all got to be suspicious. Will Guyatt, tech expert or geek, as I like to think, Will, because I love geeks. I'm a
Thank
geek.
goodness for you.
Yeah, good to see you
Thank
this
you
morning.
very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I love a bit of geekery.
It just feels horrible that you have a mobile phone.
It's a
It's like there's a
violation.
world of people trying to get in on you.
It is a violation.
Yeah,
It's
it
awful.
is.
Look, we've got sport and entertainment for you this morning. Aidan McGee and Stephanie Tetchy are both here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I saw this in the Sun this morning, a bit of Wagatha Christie going on.
Oh, my gosh, it's Wags gone wild. So this story's been out for a while.
Yeah, what is it, though? Because I usually ignore the headlines when it's wags.
Gosh,
But
I know.
this one is going so big, I need to know about it.
It's going to be around for a while, so everyone needs to get to know what it's about. So Colleen Rooney, in 2020, she had a feeling that someone was leaking stories to The Sun about her. It must have been someone who was on her Instagram. So she set a trap. On Instagram, you can put close friends where you can only have certain people watching your stories. And she set a trap where it was close friends and it was only Rebecca Vardy who was watching it. And then she trapped her and said it was her. So then it was a new scam called Wagatha Christie. But now they've taken it to court for a libel case and they've revealed the text in full of what Rebecca Vardy and her agent was saying about her. And it's been quite controversial.
It is controversial. It is. Stephanie, I'm going to sneak up to you because we've got a problem with your mic, so you're going to have to use mine for the time being. In the meantime,
Ooh,
Aidan,
that's an
I
excuse.
know.
Okay, well,
I know. What
leave
can
them
you
to
do?
that.
I mean,
Share
Aidan,
the
there's a. I mean, obviously the Rooney side of this, and a man who's he's still at Derby, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's actually his career's going really well. You know, he's doing some stellar work at Derby County. I mean, they're in serious trouble at the moment. But if he pulls that off, if he manages to keep them up this season when they've got a 21-point deduction, I would regard that as one of the biggest achievements in recent football history, right up there with Leicester City winning the Premier League title. So, irrespective of anything that's going on in his private life, he's learning on the job at the moment. He's gone into management. He did that documentary earlier in the week, didn't he?
I was just going to say about the documentary, because he does touch on his personal life in that, doesn't he?
He does indeed, yeah. Look, you have to remember, Stephanie will tell you as somebody who knows showbiz very well, these people are thrust into the spotlight at a very, very young age. Wayne Rooney was scoring goals for Everton at the age of 16. That's when he scored his first goal.
And mega famous.
Oh, mega famous.
He
was
sort of
catapulted.
On top of these
He was
footballers.
playing for Man United within 18 months of that. He was scoring goals at Euro 2004 for England at that point.
Sorry, we can't ignore this. For the benefit of our radio listeners, Stephanie and Stephen have had to snuggle up to share a microphone.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. I don't. It's a perk of the
Are we back online, are we?
This is some good oxytocin right now.
But actually, it's interesting. We were making that point with Aidan that footballers like Wayne Rooney are from 16, 17, under the most incredible scrutiny. Everything they do is photographed. Everything they say is repeated.
We take them from very modest lifestyles into a public arena which is now global, and we can't expect that, realistically, not to have an effect on them psychologically. It's as simple as that. You know, we sometimes underestimate that completely.
And frankly, even being one of their wives must be
It's quite harsh, and I think maybe footballers do need more support
Without
mentally,
doubt.
because every industry now is like, we need to talk about mental health and look after ourselves, and it seems that footballers are the ones that don't get
Rooney
most
was an
of that.
interesting case study, because if you look back at Paul Gascoigne,
Your mic's back on now, so I can...
Yay.
I'm getting all serious.
I'm going to stay in your seat, though, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wayne Rooney's an interesting case study, because if I could just get serious for a moment, I like to be serious now and again. If you look at Paul Gascoigne 30 years ago, he was taken from Newcastle and put into a property on his own by Tottenham Hotspur in North East London, in Edmonton, I think it was. And he really struggled, because he was adapting to life as a £2 million player then, which is equivalent now of probably about £100 million. So he's adapting to life, and he had all kinds of problems which later manifest themselves in later life, and that's why he probably is in the condition he's in now, unfortunately. Wayne Rooney was different because his agent and the club decided to supplant the whole family from Merseyside to a very affluent area of Cheshire to give him some support around him. So it wasn't just moving the player, it was worth their while to move the entire family, get rid of the hangers-on. That's in brutality, that's what happened. Yeah. And yes, listen, he's had setbacks, but he's still, as I say, he's doing great work as a manager. He's had a very, very good life, and I think that probably worked. The next stage is probably handling that for the next generation of players, is psychologically handling that transition from being an ordinary person in a classroom as a sixth former or a year 11 or whatever to going and being an internationally famous footballer. It's a very, very different. Oh, it's a huge jump.
But meanwhile, the wives are tearing chunks out.
Yeah, they are going crazy. I think the wives get the pressure as well, and it has always been this battle between the wags, as they say, as we've seen with this Colleen Rooney story, where about 2 years ago she outed Rebecca Vardy for selling stories to The Sun. So they're currently in a libel case, which is turning quite vicious. There was some reports of WhatsApps that was being exchanged between Rebecca and her agent, which has now been public. It's in The Sun today, and it's quite foul seeing some of the stuff she said about Colleen Rooney.
Here's a nosy little inside. Look, going from one level of fame to another, a quick look at Princess Kate and some clothes.
Nice. Oh, this is extraordinary, isn't it? If we look at the picture, it was a double-page spread in the Daily Mail today. Because, has the mic gone again? Princess Kate is going to Denmark on an official solo visit, and she's going to be meeting the Crown Princess, who is astonishingly like her. The Crown Princess is married to the heir to the throne, as is Kate, of course, and they wear, basically, they've got almost the same style.
So basically, and it's like they're style twins, actually. It's quite scary. They've got the same structure, same kind of weight, very slender,
long dark hair
and stuff. So Kate has definitely got her style twin there.
For those who are watching, obviously you can see that on the left is always the Crown Princess of Sweden. On the right of each picture is our very own Kate Middleton, as it were.
I thought it was the same person.
I know, it's absolutely astonishing. Well, they're going to be meeting in the next couple of days, and, well, they'll have to make sure they wear different outfits.
Well, look, we need to leave it there. We're out of time.
Wonderful improvisation.
Ada McGee and Stephanie Tetchy, who's my new lovely
hug buddy.
Hug buddy. Thank you very much indeed. Get in touch. Let us know where you are watching. We'll do some more of those tomorrow morning. And the email is gbviews@gbnews.uk. I'll send us a tweet at gbnews. But that's it from us.
It
See you
is.
tomorrow.
Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Ada McGivern. A very different start to the day compared to yesterday. Yesterday was frosty but bright in many places. Today it's frost-free but windy and, in some locations, wet. Spells of rain are expected through the weekend. These weather fronts across the UK stretching all the way back to the mid-Atlantic. They're going to continue to pile in throughout today and tomorrow. So, well, increasingly damp really across northern and western parts of England as well as Wales. The rain turning heavier and more persistent across Wales and northwest England into the afternoon. Drier and brighter ahead of that for East Anglia, the southeast, parts of the East Midlands, central southern England, but increasingly breezy and cloudy. Sunny spells coming through for Scotland and Northern Ireland, blustery showers here. 10 Celsius for Belfast, 8 for Manchester, 8 for London. Similar to yesterday, but not feeling very pleasant because of the wind and the rain. Coastal gales around Irish Sea coast, and then the rain eventually sinks into southern England